Hello and welcome to the pub at Universal Spectrum Forum. Today is January 20th, 2013. This is the 4th edition of the Pub Live Chat, and everyone is welcome to the pub. Today we have a special guest, Wade Frazier, who among other things has worked in the area of free energy. We also have Yaya with us, who's our resident pub bartender.
Yeah.
Gary Evans, who's
good to be here.
And Joseph Marra.
Hello there.
My, you're sounding so formal for the pub, Scott.
Well, you know, I'm a radio host. What can I do? Most of us already know that the pub is very open and laid back conversational chat. Because of the sensitive nature of Wade's history today, we do have some virtual bouncers at the bar guarding the door. But I think it's going to be a pretty laid back discussion. We'll be talking. Our main topic is free energy, but as everyone knows, the pub can go anywhere, because it's an open discussion. Probably should start with Wade Frazier.
Did you want me to talk, Scott?
Sure, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Just give us your best shot.
Just let me pour you a beer first. Ale, lagers, what do you like? I got some really good wheat beer here.
All homebrew.
Yeah, nothing too stiff right now. So.
Okay.
So, well, again, Scott invited me to do this, and I'm game, but I really, again, Scott said it's very unstructured, and so I'm here.
How about we just start with brief sort of introductions as to what everybody's doing here. Wade,
okay.
Yeah.
We know, Wade, that you are, from your website, ahealedplanet.net, that you're this massive comprehensivist who has compiled sort of a lifetime of experience in relation to not only free energy, but healing, spirituality, spiritual development, and the interconnectedness of all this in your massive website, ahealedplanet.net. And some of, I think most people on these forums, on Spectrum and I think Avalon, are well aware of what you're doing already. But for those who aren't, how about a primer?
Okay. Well, so, yeah, I've got a site out there that, I put my first site up in 1996, and but the one that's out there today was pretty much finished in 2002, and I've had the occasional small essay after that. But anyway, it was just a I don't know if it was. It's almost like it wasn't planned. It was just sort of surviving a bunch of adventures, and then spending years trying to figure out what I had just lived through, and then putting up my guesses at how the world works, and what I found out during my adventures and my subsequent investigations of a number of areas, and that's really what that's about. But in the end, it in fact, it was kind of maybe odd in that I started out in the energy business and kind of came full circle back to that, realizing that is really the key issue, the crux issue right now that our species and planet's facing. And until we get that issue resolved, nothing else matters that much. I mean, that's really the big one.
I'm kind of betting that your entire website was just sort of an exercise in you deciding to sit down and try to put all of what was in your head and all of what you experienced in one spot, almost maybe as a form of therapy than anything else, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
Say it again.
I'm kind of betting that the exercise of putting together your website the way it is was, to me, it seemed almost an exercise in therapy, where you wanted to sit down and try to collect this massive amount of stuff that was probably rattling around in your head about your experience in your life, to put it down in one spot, really just almost for your own clarity or something.
To a degree, but there was always a method to my madness, in that in the end I was really still, how to say it, my dream at age 16, I still have it. And so it's a thing where, in the end, I want to live in a world where there's free energy and this kind of stuff. I mean, and so it seems maybe a strange, circuitous way to get there, but in the end, that really is my goal, is to help have that manifest. But what happened was during the adventures, you're going, geez, this is a very multifaceted issue that, in fact, and again, I guess in a comprehensive, perspective, going, wow, this is really related to a lot of different things and the commonalities among them. I mean, in fact, I unfortunately had first-hand experience in the energy racket and the medical racket, and it was interesting to see how similar they were, and actually how some of the differences that there were. But there are rackets, and so that's something that was, I think, part of the. I don't know what the right word is for this, gestalt something, but it's just it was an understanding of how this stuff works, and the more people could understand that, the better chance we have of doing something productive about it.
Wow. Okay. So maybe we should let some of the other people introduce themselves. Gary, do you want to talk about yourself and what you do? What's your thing?
Yeah, happily. So my day job is as an agent for a number of authors and researchers around the world. So I run my own PR company called Infinite Connections, which also promotes tours to sacred sites around the world. And I'm involved with a lot of different conferences, trying to inspire conferences to start up in countries that aren't having alternative conferences is one part of my job. Because the sort of alternative scene's not the same all the way around the world. So I'm kind of getting my finger on the pulse of that. And I've just got back from Egypt. So I run a lot of tours to Egypt, Peru. This year it's going to be the UK and Ireland, Malta. And with an emphasis, my own personal research is on sound and the effects on consciousness, because we've had a lot of amazing group experiences in Egypt particularly, but also in Peru. And so I'm sort of getting tuned into sound, how it affects us, and the kind of transformation that it can help us have.
That's very interesting. Sound interests me a lot.
And well, I'm really starting to put a few pieces of the puzzle together, because resonance is one of the big things that's come out of my trips to Egypt. And they're certainly using crystal at a lot of these sites. So I normally do a talk at conferences about crystal technology, because there really is evidence for kind of Superman type crystalline structures in Egypt, huge crystal engineering, and perhaps it's not as far-fetched as we thought.
Uncle Ted won't like that.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. It's busy, and it's very rewarding work trying to share these amazing places around the planet. So normally I have a sort of bit of time in the office, and then I'm off somewhere around the world exploring ancient sites, and my focus is on which ones are what I would call really active. I mean, many of them are active in different ways, but there's certain ones I visit that really have a powerful effect on me and the guests I take there time after time. So they're consistently powerful, and that's where I'm really interested in taking guests.
Wow. And you do a lot of work with the promoting the people that speak on ancient aliens.
Yes. Yeah, I work with probably the majority of the cast on and off in some capacity. So I've got a big focus on ancient civilizations, the sort of metaphysics of perhaps what was really going on, that have been clouded through our eyes of sort of religious eyes over the ages. And well, we're off. I was just on a show yesterday. We're doing a tour in April to Egypt, and it's going to be Chris Dunn, who's the engineer, Stephen Meller, Egyptologist, and Brian Forster from Peru, who's the sort of History Channel's Ancient Aliens Peruvian consultant. And we're organising the tour with two of my friends that live near the base of the Sphinx in Cairo, and their father was Hakim Awan, who was very well known and in a good documentary, The Pyramid Code. So
yeah, that was the local guy that I can't remember the name of the woman. She was an academic in Calgary, and she produced that Pyramid Code, that 13-part series, and she found that guy. He died recently, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, I just missed him before I started going to Egypt, so it was about 4 years ago. But his son Yusuf, who's a good friend of mine, has kind of taken over from his father and is moving things forward. So I go out exploring with Yusuf into places close to the public and in pyramids that not many people get into. So definitely getting a good picture of what might have been going on.
Yeah, he was a very interesting guy. And I think she kind of came across him by accident too.
Yeah, she was introduced through, I think, one of my other clients. And yeah, he's definitely had a lot of wisdom because he was crawling around under the Great Pyramid since the sort of 30s and 40s before they started closing lots of things off.
Yeah, so he had very different experiences and saw things that a lot of people aren't allowed to see anymore. But I have to admit, though, Egypt that's an endlessly fascinating topic. But I have to admit, the whole Ancient Aliens show, I think there's a lot of crap in there. I don't necessarily believe a lot of those guys. I think there's a lot that's manufactured for TV, made up.
Well, it's an entertainment program, which is quite clear.
Obviously, yes.
A lot of the guys I work with don't actually say Ancient Aliens. Quite often it cuts to Giorgio or one of the other guys that are the ancient astronaut theorists.
Yeah.
Giorgio, is that the big hair guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the kind of...
Somebody's really got to tell him he's got to do something about that.
Well,
it's part of his gimmick.
Yeah. I thought he was waiting to be paid enough to get a haircut.
Oh,
Sells,
man.
It'd be a big job.
Yeah, it sells. You're right.
But so in Ancient Aliens defense, they reckon they're reaching 100 million people around the planet. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Yeah, but what are they reaching them with?
Well, through the History Channel around... I was just talking about why Ancient Aliens was a good in some way.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely because, apart from big hair guy saying, and it's proof, it's aliens, and everything, you could see a spiral on a cave wall and he'd say it's proof it's aliens. But the point is that a lot of these alternative researchers are getting attention out there about not just aliens, ancient history, ancient monuments, all kinds of other areas that they're covering. So that is good. That it's promoting that sort of alternative research.
And getting people to go onto the web and looking into these things more and reading books and making their own minds up.
Yeah, I agree. In that case, it's very, very good. And there's been a lot of episodes I've watched that I was like, wow, that's really good because there's some speakers on there that are incredibly knowledgeable.
But at the same time, I think it can be a bit of a problem. Like you say, it's like you were saying, it was getting people out doing their own research. Well, the problem is some people go and do their research, but most people just consume it as is and never question it. They just say, oh, so-and-so said this on TV because, as we all know, TV is the ultimate authority. So if it's on TV, it must be true. And people just take it as gospel. They don't question. That's when we have problems.
Yeah, there's definitely a big group of those people. Hopefully at some point they transition into the asking questions phase as it's a kind of a process as I see it.
Yeah. I think it's a stage. People move from one stage to the next. And it's my opinion that it's getting the information out there. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is not all, it's got to be aliens. It's not all that.
But some of their episodes, like Cowboys and Aliens, really just shoots the credibility.
Oh, jeez. Did they really do that?
Yeah, to tie in with whatever the Hollywood blockbuster that came out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they did.
Well, it's like a big commercial then, I guess.
Yeah.
So you got to put up with the commercials to get the good information, and isn't that always the case?
Well, I don't know, because for me, that just shoots the credibility all to hell. When I see something like that, I just go, oh, they're just pandering, and I just ignore them after that.
Yeah, lose that. There is a risk of losing credibility. There was one standout episode, I think season 4, maybe episode 5, The Mysteries of Puma Punko. Anyone listening, I think it's on YouTube, and that was with a lot of my clients, and it was completely different because they had some mock-up models of the sites, some sort of explanations about what might have been going on, and so all the ancient history fans really love that.
Yeah, but that one was quite thoroughly debunked. I saw somewhere too.
Well,
their whole take on Puma Punku.
There was the guy that came out with the Ancient Aliens debunking, if that's what you're referencing. I haven't seen anything on that episode particularly.
No, I saw somebody quite accurately critical of their take on Puma Punku. I don't know about much else, but...
Well, it's definitely a debate, that site. It's very interesting. I've been there.
Yeah. And generally when you see these sorts of things, people coming out, they're just attaching themselves. The debunkers in general are attach themselves to a subject that's getting wide attention to elevate themselves.
Yeah, that was definitely what went on with the 3-hour Ancient Aliens Debunked, I felt.
Yeah, well,
then how accurate do you think they were about that?
Well, I found it thought-provoking, and Chris Dunn was the guy that was offering this completely different explanation for the H blocks that we see on the site, and I found that very interesting. It was a different way of looking at it. Certainly plausible, and it didn't need anyone landing in a spacecraft to make it happen. So, yeah, I quite enjoyed that, but of course I guess I represent him as an agent, so I might be a little bit biased.
Well, at least you admit to it.
Yeah, so I'll hold my hands up to anything.
Yeah.
So, Joseph, we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, Joseph, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as some people may know, I have 2 radio shows that I've done in the past. One is Universal Talk, and the other one is A Guiding Light. My day job is practicing family medicine, and ever since I was a kid, I always questioned this reality we all call life, and all the things we've been taught that never made sense to me. And so I did my own exploration along with traditional education and practicing traditional medicine. And, quite frankly, some of the things that come in the office, you're not trained to deal with. And, they're supposed to be considered, woo-woo, or people are just simply crazy if they have these, certain experiences. And what do you do when they're sitting there right in front of you with these experiences? And they have their husband that can corroborate what they're saying, like, predicting things that are going to happen and then they do, or by location. Or you have, CIA, FBI, Homeland Security guys, people that went into Iraq and Afghanistan, and these soldiers are telling me that half the things you're seeing on the news are not even happening. And so you start to question, and then you start to research for yourself what's really going on. You start to interview various people across the, at least the United States, and then in other countries even. And I needed a platform really to speak about this, because once all this started coming together and I was putting the pieces to this puzzle together, I needed a platform to say, hey, wow, this is really interesting. This is something that, if we could really get individuals from various disciplines and put them all together in a forum, kind of like what you're doing here tonight, how is this related? Or, how can we fit these puzzles to or the pieces to the puzzle together? And so basically that's what I did with the radio shows. And I've traveled the United States, and I just come back from Mexico in December, exploring the Mayan civilization. And I've been to the ESETI Ranch, experiencing things like UFOs, and in Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, seeing like ghostly soldiers, and exploring the Bigfoot phenomenon, all these things that are supposed to be woo-woo, as a lot of people call it, or crazy things. I mean, when you have personal experiences, and yet you're an educated individual that works in mainstream, it's pretty difficult to talk to people that that are in your discipline, because they all think you're crazy. But you've had the experience. So, I mean, that's what I bring to the table. I practice traditional medicine, but I also do my own exploration, and then I interview various people from all over the world and put it on various websites so that people can make their own decisions about what the various people from various disciplines, whether it be finance or black ops projects or whatever. And so I think my mission was to just come here and maybe assist in changing medicine from where it is and where we all know it needs to go. Well, we have a broken system.
Yeah, I think healing in medicine as by and large these days is not practiced with any kind of intelligence at all. But you mentioned something just a minute ago about, once you get to a certain point and you start to see the bigger picture of reality, you just can't explain anything to people, or the people that you know and relate to every day. You just seem to be able to relate to less and less. And I wanted to ask Wade about that, how, knowing what you know and experiencing everything that you've experienced, how do you relate to your world every day? How do you relate to your people in your office? Has your relationship to your friends and family changed the whole time? I'm sure you got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, well, I actually write about that a fair amount. And it's just a thing where, in fact, I'm the only guy I know in the free energy biz or who's been there who actually still can work in the corporate world. It's hard to straddle those two, and that's for sure. And so usually in the corporate world, I hide, so I kind of hide out. And so I use my professional skills, being trained as a CPA, et cetera. I do that in my day job. And again, it was funny that that was my role when I was playing the free energy game also. So it wasn't like, it wasn't radically different in some ways from what I did in the free energy business, but it's a thing where, no, and absolutely, you can't walk through the halls and chat up people at the water cooler about free energy or any of those kinds of things. And in fact, I caution people who do get introduced to this stuff, who, have a corporate job or something, and they go, oh yeah, I want to, and this is normal, right? You really start going there and finding these things out, and you want to tell everybody the good news, and it doesn't fly, and so I've seen careers end, I've seen lots of relationships end, all that kind of stuff. And so, again, anybody who's done this very much knows that. I mean, usually you find that out pretty quickly. And so, but anyway, in my old age, you know what? In my old age, and I think people like Scott kind of get me to do interviews, et cetera, I'm less reticent than I used to be, and
you're blaming me.
Say what?
You're blaming me.
Exactly. And so anyway, so it'll be in the last couple of years. Actually, I've actually done this to some people around me to, like, again, they'd actually bring something up related to this, and I'd go, okay, let's talk about my astronaut buddies and the rest of this stuff, and interestingly, I mean, again, it's because I'm somebody they've worked with for years. I know I'm not insane or whatever. And then it's pretty, in fact, recently I did it with a close colleague, and he goes, I've been working with all these years. I know how honest and sane you are. And the stuff that you're saying just sounds like it's coming from outer space, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And except though, it's just, the outer space stuff is nothing more than the experiences that I witnessed, or the experiences that Brian witnessed or people around me witnessed. And it's just a thing where it's challenging, obviously. It's obviously challenging, and I really can't. So like my family, pretty much can't have these discussions with my family. Some friends, in fact, again, because a lot of my friends got involved with me when I was in my free energy days, that was very interesting. I mean, it wrecked a lot of friendships, but actually some friendships became, like gold nuggets to me, from that. So there's definitely a upside and downside to that. But in general, yes, you can't really do this man on the street or people that you are in your circles of your daily existence. It's difficult. And it's dangerous too.
And I think this is why I say that any realization, any sort of awakening to, and I don't like even using that word awakening anymore, but any of this awakening to the way the world really works now, really needs to be accompanied by a certain amount of spiritual development. Because, we see how many of these people, they start discovering this stuff, and they have to tell everybody. Everybody has to know. They have to wake everybody up. And when they go and try and spew it out to everybody, and they either get looked at like they've got three heads, or get ignored, or people leave their lives, they get really attached to having and being able to awaken people, and it wrecks them. They just, they can't understand, why won't people listen to me, and they pound their heads against the wall. But without that development of you as a spiritual being, you are almost not equipped to deal with these bigger picture issues.
True. This is very hazardous. Very hazardous to your health in many ways. And I'd give an example, and this is somebody close to me who said, my nephew, he read some free energy book and he'd really like to talk to you. And I'm like, it's just a guy known for a long time. It's his nephew. And I said, okay, sure. After 3 conversations with me, the person was institutionalized.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Didn't know how to take it.
In a rubber room. And I got blamed for it all. And I'm just like, And again, wasn't anything more than just my experiences, you know. And it's like, wow. So yes, it's very. This is all very hazardous territory, really, from somebody who's come from the conventional. Again, the conventional conditioning, and back to your spiritual part, exactly. If I didn't have a bunch of spiritual training before I embarked on my odyssey, I wouldn't have survived. No way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people like Sparky Sweet, who thought sending a working free energy device to like GE, who owned the governing of electricity, that they're going to welcome him with open arms. Yep. And parade through the streets this new discovery, and everything is going to be perfect. I mean, he literally thought that, obviously, if it's a better form of electricity, they're going to go for it.
And yes, and
then he got killed.
No, it's a how to say it. The system works very brilliantly in that way. In that people who, you know, kind of go fringe a little bit and come up with this stuff. The flies just fly right into the spider web, you know, just go straight into it, and thinking that, you know, I mean, it's amazing to see that, and it's very dangerous, dangerous to play that game.
Gary, you had something to add to this too on this topic of spirituality and being able to contain a bigger reality.
Definitely. Well, I speak to a lot of people at events, and I mean, the tours are designed a lot of the time to guide people through, you could say, the awakening process or moving it on, and we're all different, so you're never going to promise anything to anybody. And there is one thing that I have become aware of, and whether you want to call it a Kundalini awakening or this kind of suddenly big awareness of lots of things that are wrong in the world, and a lot of people change their job at that point. They have problems with partners. One's kind of more awake, you could say. So I have quite a lot of friends that have gone through that process. It can be a huge upheaval, and there's certainly one of the first problems with this dramatic shift is you think you're the only one it's happened to, and so you need to tell everybody, and then when the mind is becoming open and you start accepting everything as possible, and so people can, I think, go down blind alleys. That's one of the dangers.
Right. I think another problem you see a lot is they come from a particular developmental perspective that is endemic in mythic religion, where they're waiting for a savior, they're waiting for a leader, they're waiting for somebody to come, a government, a Jesus, or somebody to come and fix the world for them, and if they just believe hard enough, it can happen, you know.
Yeah, we've got to the point of us all needing to get involved in sorting out the problems we perceive, I think.
And the first place that you go to sort those problems up is within yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Self-responsibility.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these people joining forums thinking that a forum is a place where everybody's going to get together and come up with a solution to take action to save the world, to do something outside in the world to make it better. And really, that's completely wrong. It completely misses the point. The place to start is to sit alone, quietly, in a room with nothing else, and sit and wait. It's a place to start anyway.
Yeah, sit still and do something.
My starting point was with the intention I'd like to inspire those around me, thinking it was my 3 or 4 friends at the time, and it ended up being organising interviews that go out to millions of people. So it kind of snowballed a bit bigger than I was thinking.
Yeah, but your original intention was there. Your original intention is, I need to share. I mean, I have the same thing being a radio host. Joseph had the same sort of experience being a radio host. And it's just, you know what? There's people out there that have information. And I want to create a format so they can share that information.
Yeah.
It's another way of looking at things. Generally, what you find with those people is they've already gone through the self-reflection stages. They've gone through that. They've run the track already. You know, at least one part of the track.
Yeah, it's definitely ongoing. I had a kind of epiphany in the Great Pyramid that put it into perspective to me, and it kind of showed me this ladder reaching off into eternity from my perspective, and it showed me my foot on the first rung of the ladder, and it kind of the impression was, it's like, you've done well because you've got onto the ladder. A lot of people are still trying to get onto the ladder, but don't lose perspective of how fantastic you are. Don't let your ego take charge, because that ladder is far longer than you're ever going to see the top of, probably in this lifetime.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking back through my own journey, and I remember specifically wanting to bring everybody with me. And in fact, that was my whole mission, was like, oh man, when I know the truth, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to stand on this mountain and I'm going to tell everybody what the heck is going on. But what I realized was I have to use my own discernment about, okay, who's really ready for this? Because everybody's on the different rung, as Gary eloquently said. And, you know, everybody's truth is therefore different. Like a couple weeks ago, my truth was different than it is today. And maybe Wade said something that inspired me to look into some free energy, and now my awareness now has changed from what it was a couple weeks ago. So exactly. I really think that if we're out there, we have to be responsible about who we say what to. And energetically, as we're broadcasting, people will be drawn energetically to the information for themselves, and that we can't just force this information down your mom or your dad or your sister or your significant other's throat. And, you know, another thing I learned was, what are you willing to give up? Because for the freedom and the truth of what is really going on, you have to give some things up, because not everybody grows at the same time. And I know I've lost, I don't even say lost. I mean, it was a blessing while I was with certain individuals, but when you outgrow one another, and that's the beauty of having free will and allowing yourself to go through this process. When you're ready to walk away from certain situations or relationships, your soul will tell you. And you know, sometimes we look at it as though it's horrific, but really it was a blessing, and that person probably helped you get to where you are currently. But now you need to spread your wings and go a little further. And only you can decide whether you're going to go further or whether you're going to stay. And that comes down to discernment, with whether you call us light workers, way showers, whatever you want to call it. But anybody that's on this call and anybody listening, we're all part of this movement that's happening. And, you know, this year is going to be huge. I'm so excited to see some of the things that are already transpiring in a positive way. So,
like what? Cite some things if you can think of. Everybody here, what do you see that is good that's happening in the world that gives you hope, as it were, that things are going well and are going to get better?
Well, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Nothing.
Nothing. Reaver the nihilist.
The internet is definitely a power for the good, as much as there's bad things. Us being able to do this call, people being able to find this show, the speed of the transfer of information, the brainstorming, these are things that couldn't happen 20 to 25 years ago, and it can only speed up the development of consciousness. And there's certainly arguments for and against, but the way I see it is, it's helping all of the people a similar level of understanding, find each other and get together. And that is very empowering, because there are probably people listening today that are having these experiences, going through the process, that feel very isolated. Is it only me that cares about the world? Because this was part of my story. I thought I was the only one that felt this way, and the world just didn't. I seem to remember somewhere more harmonious without all of these terrible things happening. And so it can be very an isolated feeling. So when we bring people together, whatever the circumstances, that's definitely a power for the good, I would say.
Right on. Joseph?
Yeah, you know, the more people I see in my day-to-day practice, and the more people I talk to, are at least more open to what is going on, because nothing else makes sense. It's almost like we've hit rock bottom. It's like, all right, where do we go from here? We're killing ourselves. We're killing the planet. What can we possibly do? And I'm open to hear some suggestions about what's going on. So just that openness to hear another perspective other than what we've been taught through K through 12 and then our college years, and what's been spread across the mainstream media. So people are out there looking, they want it. Like I said, wherever I travel, there are more and more people that are open. The internet is out there. Look what's going on in Iceland now. I mean, they could pave the way. They can say, okay, well, how did you do that? And, all the other things that are positive that are happening, the way the universe works, in my opinion, is that things just don't, bam, one day you wake up and everybody's in perfection. Because everybody is on a different path. Everybody's truth is different. As I said, we all have different people from different soul growths here. So I don't think it can possibly happen that way. And the way the universe works is it's a gradual thing. But things are speeding up, at least in my perspective. And we talked about perspective earlier. So I think all that is positive.
Yeah, I think things are speeding up quite dramatically. I see that. We can talk about the internet. And one of the things I notice is happening is in mainstream media, I think part of the last gasp of mainstream news is when you hear them talking about, and a lot of stories about talking about conspiracy theorists. They're devoting a lot of time trying to, poo-poo the whole conspiracy theory people. That must mean they're pushing some buttons with them.
Yeah, I think at this point I would refer back to Wade, because Wade sort of evolved over time, if I could say this, that you spent a lot of time around the free energy inventors.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dennis Lee, Brian O'Leary, who was an investigator into the free energy area, talked a lot about it. Mm-hmm. Adam Tremblay, you were around these people, and you were actively involved in getting the information all about free energy out. Now you've sort of altered your way of coming at the subject, as you just want the consciousness of people to be aware of free energy as possible.
That's a big thing. Exactly. And it's, again, what I'm attempting to do is get people to understand the role of energy in our world today. I mean, that's really a big one. I mean, most people, you go to the United States, the average person doesn't know that when they're filling their SUV up, that's as much energy as runs their body for a year. I mean, most people don't have any idea about that kind of stuff. And so it's a thing where a lot of what I'm trying to do is get people thinking in terms of energy, how it runs the world, and what would free energy mean to all that? I mean, what is all the constraints that are built into the system right now, and all the things we do that are so destructive relating to our energy practices? What if you didn't have to do that anymore? And that's really my main message.
Well, what was I going to say? Oh, I hate when that happens.
Hey, it gets worse as you get older.
Jeez, no.
Hey, you better quit drinking too. I mean, that might be part of the problem.
What was that, Joe?
You better stop or slow down with what you're drinking there, since we are at the pub.
Man, it's the caffeine. Yeah. I'm over caffeinated.
Yeah, our bartender's only drinking coffee. Can you believe that?
That's what I was going to say. Is that what you call it these days? Coffee?
It's an Irish coffee, man.
Hey, Reaver, I got some Reposado tequila here I should dig into then.
So nice. Which one?
The Baluarte. Friend of mine
right, the one you told me about.
Yeah, a friend of mine was just in Mexico City. They brought me back this bottle of Reposado tequila that is quite nice. So maybe I'll have to.
Yeah, I think that's a premium thing because I haven't seen that. I've kept going to the stores here in my city and I haven't found it. So I think it's like a premium thing. It's just for export.
For export, maybe. Could be. I don't know. Unless it's bootleg, unless it's methanol or something, and I'm drinking methanol or I don't know.
And probably it's probably the really expensive stuff too. Who knows?
Don't know.
Wait, did you find that people are more open now to these sort of concepts? I mean, you're more active now on the Avalon forum. You have your own section in there talking about this. You're planning on, and maybe you'd like to discuss this, you're planning on taking some time off and getting further into the whole free energy concept.
So how'd you start that off again?
I said you're more aware.
Yeah, it's interesting
because you're becoming more public.
Kind of, and it's how to say it. It's a thing where I remember when, God, when I met Dennis, it was the day I met him. There was speaking at the Seattle Center with camera crews and everything. And after we got him out of jail in the late '80s, he did, I bet, over 1,000 radio shows. And then so he's definitely, kind of this this point of the spear, that made a lot of those kind of waves. And so there is more. I mean, I'd say millions of Americans, have heard of him, but at the same time, then the establishment reacts, and so he's had several national TV shows that smear him, and so it's
Right.
a thing of, so when you say there's more awareness, okay, there's more general awareness, but if I ask, Dennis, if I brought up Dennis's name with people who probably heard him, they go, oh yeah, I saw him on that show, that guy's the criminal of the century or something. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and that sort of thing has happened with a lot of the other pre-energy inventors, people that have made impact out there in the pre-energy I mean, Adam Tremblay spoke to the UN, for Christ's sake. I mean, what sort of effect? You would think by now that we would have free energy.
Well, Wade, I remembered what I was going to say earlier, Wade. I completely agree with what you say, and I've read on your website that there needs to be a certain amount of spiritual development that needs to happen in the general populace before free energy can happen. And one of the reasons is the concept just needs to be something that people's consciousness can contain. Because I've mentioned this little story in the pub before. I remember having a conversation with a couple of people, just strangers that I met in a store someplace, just standing around talking. And one of them was talking about, oh, well, we live in this prairie. We have so much area here. We could put up these fields and fields of solar panels, and we'd have all this energy that we could use. Another guy talks about, oh, we got all these wind farms that we could have now. And then I come up and start talking about how energy is infinitely available everywhere. We've never needed any kind of centralized utility or fuel of any kind, and I explained what it is and how it is, and they're listening politely. And as soon as I finish, they go back to saying, "Oh, but we have so much area. We have so much land that we can put solar cells." It was like I was invisible. Their consciousness could not even take in the idea that energy is infinite and freely available anywhere. So this is why people need to evolve to the point where they can contain this.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where, and again, after I survived my, free energy days in the 80s, and then literally trying to reach out to all sorts of, big names, little names, but actually trying to engage, quote, the public, and seeing all the different reactions and the denial. I mean, most of it was denial, but the different reactions, and eventually, and again, trading notes with Brian O'Leary and other people, and they're just kind of going, what is it? I mean, it was just nobody could keep their eye on that. Nobody could stay focused on that. And again, for me, what I eventually realized, probably about 10 years ago, was that free energy, et cetera, it means abundance, which we've never had in history. And so it's literally all the leading ideologies are scarcity based, and an abundance assumption, it collapses all of our schools of thought. And so it's sort of like it's so, and I don't think people, you wouldn't see how to say it. It wasn't like they would consciously get that I'm talking about abundance and that's the threat. But what it was, though, it was so incongruent with their root assumptions of the world that, to your point, it flies way over they don't even recognize it, and if they do, there's no place for it to fit, I think, to your point, in their awareness. So it gets discarded.
Well, it's almost like you need to use a Zen koan or something. So one of the things that I like to do to people is I'll just throw this little idea out that, paying your energy bill is like paying the sunlight bill. Mm-hmm. Just a little idea that, well, why do you pay for your sunlight? Why do you pay for electricity?
It's like paying the oxygen you breathe bill. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they can argue, well, geez, you go 100 miles outside the planet, there's no oxygen, so you'll run out of it pretty quick. This way, sunlight never stops, right? They can't argue.
Not for a while, anyway.
Well, yeah, a few billion years, whatever. But they can't argue that well, the sunlight disappears when so.
Yeah. Our biggest contribution to this whole thing, or how things would change for people, would be, in my mind, as we're talking here, the first thing that comes to mind is what if the media all of a sudden started covering free energy. And it was on every station, on every commercial, whether people got it or not, as it became the example. And as people started getting these things in their cars and in their homes, and it became the example, and other people were having them, whether they knew how it worked or the paradigm, even though their soul development might not be with everybody that understands the full complexity of it, they would still be a part of it and they would grow into it. It'd be almost like planting a seed, because
true.
basically look at 100 years ago or 150 years ago. We've evolved pretty quickly in that amount of time. So if the media, that's our biggest hurdle right now. If that would come out, and you said earlier, Yaya, that, everybody takes things for face value. If you see it on TV, it must be fact. Well, just that influence alone would just catapult this earth into a new realm, a new paradigm. And in the way, like I said earlier, the universe works, for those who are ready for it and those who have eyes to see it will know what it is. And those who don't, they'll kind of evolve into it eventually.
Yeah. And that's where Godzilla comes in. Wade, could you do it?
Yeah, well, what you're talking about, Joseph, is part of what we call a conundrum. We're in this business because you say, yeah, if the media went and started promoting, free energy like they promote Viagra or something, yeah, it'd be like we'd have it tomorrow because it is already here. But the fact is that, again, when the mainstream media covers free energy, it's about smearing Dennis. Or it's about some kind, and again, it's the TV mentality. And in fact, the TV mentality is not much of a mentality, really, and so that's part of the issue, that the people plugged in and that's where they're getting their information from. The guys controlling that make sure it stays controlled. This is, again, anybody who's been in any of these kind of areas gets that part. I mean, Brian, my God, Brian he played at the high levels for a long time, and as he started singing the free energy song, he found himself more and more marginalized and more marginalized. And again, that's not how to say it. The marginalization wasn't it wasn't all conspiratorial. It's partly structural. I mean, he's saying something that sounds so insane. So again, when Brian did his globetrotted, visited free energy inventors, all this kind of stuff, then he went banging on the doors of the institutions where he used to work, and he's going, hey, free energy. And there were no takers. And these people, these were, again, these big name Nobel laureates and all this kind of stuff, and there were no takers because it sounded so crazy. And this was part of, this is part of my education, seeing what Brian went through back, my God, almost 20 years ago with this stuff. And it's just a thing where, again, the receptivity is, from the quote establishment isn't there. And in fact, Brian, we co-wrote a, and this was Brian's idea. This was like about 3 years ago. We wrote a proposal to the Department of Energy because I think about the time Obama was elected, there was this idea. We had this, come on in and give us your proposal for exotic energy technology, and I was very skeptical of that kind of how genuine that offer was. But it's a thing of, but we did approach them, and again, total shutout. If you approach the establishment in these areas, it's a shutout. It's not only a shutout, but you're going to get burned at the stake, and they'll televise that, so your public execution will get televised. But the message that you're trying to present will not be heard, or it will only come up to be ridiculed, and et cetera. And this is typical. This is typical of this field. And again, the energy, they've tossed around, and again, my estimate right now is they've tossed around somewhere around $250 billion in quiet money to keep the lid on this kind of stuff. There are some impressive resources being devoted to keep the lid on these things. And so, and to me, that is, I always got to give a nod to Godzilla. It's like he's there, he's vigilant, and at this point, I don't see any way that an effort is going to make it through the media unless Godzilla's approving it.
It makes me wonder if there's a more subtle way to do it. I've having done documentaries for years, and in television and feature film and such, that what I've learned is that you can make a great documentary that is really fantastic on a subject. Of course, truth-based programming, you can go and interview a bunch of people and follow people around, things like that. But the only people that can consume this and are going to get it are people who are already there. So you can put any kind of concept in a documentary, and the only people that are going to watch it and like it are people who already agree with its contents. So it's only preaching to the converted. I think a good way, one of the ways you need to sort of introduce these ideas or help people raise their consciousness in this thing is to start inserting these ideas into fiction, whether it be book, whether it be feature film. And when you see these concepts, when you see characters dealing with these concepts in some way, or that they're just simply facts in there, people start to sort of accept this as a reality. And then later, if it appears in their real world, they're more receptive to it.
Oh, I hear you. And that's, there's a whole school of thought that Star Trek is, one of those kind of efforts. Or, heck, The Incredibles, that cartoon that came out several years ago.
Brilliant movie.
There was that guy who had 0-point energy, right?
Yeah.
That kid. I have 0-point energy. And I almost fell off my chair when I saw that. Like, whoa, okay, interesting. So
I'm starting to see this kind of happen more and more in programs like, for example, Person of Interest. They're introducing a lot of big picture concepts into that show, like the CIA running drugs and things that are happening above and below in the real world that most people aren't completely aware of. That's a show that's doing a really good job of introducing some of these ideas into the mainstream consciousnness.
Yeah, and you guys, you and Scott are media guys, right? You guys work in the business. And
Yeah.
I've how to say it, I'm doing this, but most of my thrust is kind of not around that. It's not, I'm trying to get how to say it. I don't think, at least what I'm trying to do is not trying to reach John Q. public, really. I'm trying to reach a smaller audience that is a little more initiated, because I do believe, again, and this is after several rounds of playing the free energy game and stuff, and kind of going, man, 100 of us could have done it, but there just weren't 100 of us, and 1,000 of us at a certain level of awareness could really punch a hole in the paradigm, and maybe 10,000 of us who at a certain level might be able to punch a hole. And that's kind of that's kind of, how to say, that's been my thinking for a while. It's definitely evolved over the years, but that's kind of where I am. And I've just noticed that, again, when I don't, how to say it, when there's another news show about Dennis or something, I don't watch. I just like, oh, okay, because it's kind of like I've seen enough of that, And so anyway, it's sort of a thing where it's possible something like that's going to happen. And at the same time, it's sort of like my orientation was just a little more, it's more specific. It's just more specific, a little more, trying to go deeper, because it's the thing, it's very challenging with a, audio visual media presentation. For one thing, it's difficult to go deep. It's difficult, and most of that going deep it's an interactive, iterative process. Somebody's really, you got to go deep on this stuff to really get to those places. And I think that, media mainstream or those kind of presentations can, I think they can, I said, seeing that on The Incredibles, I'm going, whoa, look at that. And you're right. It's the thing where maybe more people at least have heard the idea, and it's like maybe it's not so bizarre. And I get that part. I think there's a role for that. Absolutely.
Well, when you talk about going deep, are you talking about going deep into people's consciousness to sort of put these ideas into them? Because, there have been
they want to go after them. They
Say
don't
again?
have to go after them. They want to, how to say it, they need to want it.
Yes.
They're going to be doing everybody has to do the work. There really are no shortcuts. That's the thing. It's like we all have to do the work. At the same time, if somebody had a free energy device delivered to their home, they'd use it. and that's kind of one of the crux of the conundrums is that the forces that are trying to make sure that you don't get it delivered to your home, you don't get to go down, to downtown Manhattan and see it. That's part of that's part of Godzilla's plan to make sure that is not the case.
But you know what? I think if you were even to deliver a free energy device to somebody's home, they either wouldn't say, they might say, get this crap out of here, you're full of shit. Or they might decide they don't like it because it's not the right color. And, you know what I mean? Because they just wouldn't even be able to take it in.
Well, and I'll say the closest thing that's ever been on the world market for free energy is what Dennis was doing back in the 80s with, I'll put it on your house for free and you just pay me what it's saved till it's paid for. And when that's the offer, it's like, well, how would you just like your energy bills to go away? Everybody was signing up for that. I mean, that's what we found out. It was like, who wouldn't do that? Well, you're going to put something on my house for free and my energy bills go away. Well, why not? And what it looks like, I don't care as long as my energy bill goes away. And so that was, and again, I mean, Dennis was the master at going after that. And of course, the gatekeepers of the establishment made sure that we didn't live long playing that game. But I think though the public, no, if you know, one of the more common, in fact, it's interesting, over the years you get these common responses to the idea of free energy. And one of the most common ones is somebody going, you know, I'd really like to live way out in the middle of nowhere somewhere and have my energy needs met. Do you have a free energy machine for me? I mean, that's a really common, and it's not, you know, it's not helpful, but I'm just saying that I think a person would use it. You show up to their house and put it on their house, energy bills go away. They go, well, that's it. Sounds good to me. And again, one of the things I realized is the people that are, when you're engaging people at that level, they just kind of sit around waiting for you to deliver the free energy machine. And if you don't, they go, oh, well, I was, you know, they had no skin in the game, you know. So
yeah, it leaves their consciousness at that point. And I get that because people are pretty much trained in this modality of, you know, of I get up, I go to work, I come home, gotta go get groceries, I better fill the car up first and come home, and I'll come home and my lights will be on, and at the end of the month the bill will come and I'll pay that and my lights will continue to be on. You know, it's a mentality that they get into that they just sort of go along with.
Yeah, I mean, the inertia in the system is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's fueled with things like routine and shopping and the NFL and iPhones and.
I think it was George Carlin that said the most powerful force in the universe is inertia, you know, and anybody who's trying to move these rocks, they get that, you know. It's like, okay, a lot of inertia. But
then again, I like Frank Zappa's theory that the most abundant element in the universe was not hydrogen, but it was stupidity.
Einstein said something similar, yes.
Yeah, I think Einstein had a couple of notes on that. Gary, you had a point to make? Gary Evans?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about fiction entering mainstream consciousness, I would like to put forward, first of all, The Matrix, which has had a huge impact on people in that community.
Yes, good stuff.
Star Wars, which... If he had taught me one thing, the Force, there's definitely something behind the Force, and I think a lot of people accepted that one. And probably one of my best examples, which I realised during an experience in Egypt, was that there was a Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and
that's a good show.
There was the shape-shifting race that had their own planet. And remember the name of them?
Well, it was the guy was Odo. He was the station security chief, and he would have to sleep in a bucket every night.
Yep.
So the theory behind that was you could take on a human form. When you return to the planet, this sort of individual consciousness merged into a collective consciousness. That was the message that they were showing you. So they were all kind of connected in this water. That's what it looked like. And when I had a group out of body experience at Luxor Temple in Egypt, and it was out of body, like back from whence I came. So not out of body looking at my body, but back over to the other side. And when I was there, I felt like a drop of consciousness in an ocean of consciousness. So when I returned, I was like, my God, whoever put that part into Deep Space Nine either tuned into the kind of reality behind the reality or has gone through exactly the same process that I had. So there's definitely people mixing a lot of things into sci-fi that there's a sort of basis for in our existence, I would say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know people that I've interviewed on my show who have said they were ghostwriters on Star Trek and on Stargate. As a matter of fact, there was a guy who was very close to the creator of Stargate, who basically took information from Adam Tremblay and put it in the show, and then called Adam and said, "You got to watch tonight's show." I did something. And when they talk about the what was that device they called? It was the
ZPE, the zero point energy device.
Yep, the ZPE device. That all came about because this guy was friends with Adam Tremblay, and Tremblay talks about 0 point energy, and he says, "You got to watch tonight's episode." And Adam watched it and called him back and said, "You son of a bitch, you still me." And he said, No, it's getting the information out there. We'll use any means. And Adam did do ghostwriting with Star Trek and New Gene Roddenberry and the whole bit. But a lot of these guys, like I said, are behind the scenes doing ghostwriting. You never make that connection, but they're inserting things in their shows, in their, Babylon 5. I could go through a list of things in there that were sort of inserted. Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. There are a lot of these different shows that they can insert concepts in, and they're just sort of under the radar. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. But there's a lot of people that look at those shows and go, "I know where you got that from."
Yeah. And once you insert that into them, when they hear about actual free energy and people talking about it, they go, "Hey," and they're more receptive to actually listening and taking it in then.
Right, but I think it's a very long road. Like Wade says, there's a lot of stuff out there that's put up as roadblocks, And not only that, I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's roadblocks to understanding.
Wade, I've heard Stephen Greer talk about this. It's been some time since I've heard him talk about it, but what do you think about it? Where the idea that, maybe there's not as many people standing in the way of this that there used to be. That some of the people that used to stand in the way are doing the opposite, or they're starting to help, or they're getting out of the way now. Do you see that happening?
Yeah. So Greer and the Disclosure Project, etc., has been a very interesting touch point for me. Again, Brian and Greer were thick, and in fact, Brian almost lost his life over the UFO issue, and a lot of the stuff that the disclosure witnesses were talking about and some of the stuff that Greer came out with were confirming events that happened to me and people around me. And one of them is exactly that, which is that again, I call him Godzilla. Actually, Greer calls him Godzilla. I started using that name. Dennis used to call him the big boys. I've used the word global controllers at times. I mean, there's been a many different names, for these kind of people. But, yes, I think that, and I've said that I think, and again, hearing some of Greer's updates on what he thought the percents were, I would say that 40 years ago, pretty much everybody was with the program. And what happened was that, it's anybody who is the least bit aware knows that we are destroying the planet. This is very obvious. This is very obvious that we're really tipping along the edge of the abyss. And so at that level, and again, I can't get into too many specifics publicly about some of this, but the bottom line is that some of those positions are hereditary, and hereditary positions always have a danger, right? You're not really hand-picking these people. And anyway, saner heads have been, yes, there's been dissent in those ranks for quite a while now. And the last I heard from Greer was 70-30 favoring it. And this was now, I think, 2004 when we had our NAM conference. In fact, at that time, I think he said it was 50-50. But, and again, one of my associates was given an underground technology show a long time ago of the stuff they got. And this was the good guys, the white hats. The so-called white hats, yes. And so, anyway, and when I heard that, I'm going, oh, yeah. And then again, it was later that I'm hearing Greer's disclosure witnesses discuss some of these technologies and some of the things. And I'm going, yes, that's what my friend experienced was that. So anyway, yeah, it's definitely not it's very fractured at that level. It's very fractured. And again, when I interviewed with Scott, I just said, if I had to put my money on it, I would say that free energy could come out of the outcome of that struggle. If I had to, again, if you had to be reasonable about it, saying what's the, you're going to put odds on it. If it's going to happen, my odds would be on that. However, I'm not just waiting around for those guys to deliver it to my house either, so I'm doing what I can. But yes, they've had it for a long time. There are struggles happening at that level, and it's quite possible that, something's going to happen. But, when I see the lone inventors going after it or something, it's the thing of lone inventor doesn't have a chance. And if a Dennis or a Greer or even an Adam, let's say, would come forward and do it, it's only because they were allowed to. That's where in the current environment, unless you had one big army behind you that wasn't susceptible to being corrupted and all the things I've seen, it's going to be because it was a sponsored project from Godzilla. He finally decided to become a vegetarian or play some limited game. But the thing is that, again, if the free energy genie's ever let out of the bottle, they can't put it back in. So that's the thing. It's that's such a momentous. And again, it changes everything.
It changes everything.
Changes everything. And so that is why there's so much attention and again, power and the various hurdles. And it's awesome. When you're just a little people trying to do a free energy project, you start running up against these obstacles, and it's, if you're only a few hundred people or something, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. But, in the big picture, it's not very many people. It really isn't. There's only about, and again, when I heard Greer say 200 to 300, it's something like that. It's something like 200 or 300 people are kind of the policy setters for the world economy. It's not very many people, and their entourage and their little teams and all this kind of stuff. Come on, I don't know what the numbers are, but I imagine it's under 50,000 people. And it's not that many people.
And the fear is real. I'll tell you, being a radio host, I've had people on my show that off record, they say stuff that, and I'm like, wow, that's great information. We could, no. No, not.
Yeah,
no.
I've seen that enough in doing
and
documentaries in different parts of the world too. Cameras rolling, you get one story, you put the camera away and you're drinking beer, you get the real story.
Yeah. And Joseph, being a radio host, has probably heard the same thing. Gary, being a promoter, has probably heard the same thing, that there's official open stories, and then there's stuff that's like, nah, I don't think I'm ready to go there quite yet.
Yes. And as you know, that comes with the territory. It just does.
Would you guys agree, Joe and Gary?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, but when it gets to a point, I've spoken to an astronaut who, said there was a 200-foot UFO parked outside the ISS who wouldn't let them leave. Blocked them from leaving. They had to postpone leaving the ISS for 2 days. And I'm like, wow, what a great information. Let's get that out to the world. He's like, do you know how much money I make as an astronaut? So again, this probably fits into some other areas like Michael Tellinger talking about contributionism, and some other people I've talked to about the concept of making a living, which is sort of a bit of a slave chain on your foot. You're dragging this ball around.
It is, yeah.
And it prevents people from going to a certain level with things. And also the fear of ridicule and the fear of bodily harm is also another impediment.
Yeah, you know what's another thing, Scott, is we talked about the ladder with the rungs and bringing up the ET phenomenon in my research. That's another thing. In the past, we're talking about a lot of past experiences that I think we've all had, and Wade is demonstrating it pretty well. And I've had the same things, but what I'm seeing, and this is what in the near future, within the next couple of years, and that's what I was saying earlier, is I think things are changing. I'm waiting for that first domino to drop, because once that happens, the cat's out of the bag. You can't go back. There's going to be so many changes. I mean, just imagine if they would just admit that ETs exist. Okay, well, how did they get here? Oh, well, they have free energy device. Well, wait a minute. What's that about? You know, so in any number of ways, this could come out. And I think any number of people could bring this to the forefront, whether it be the president of the United States or any other president or any, you know, and that's why I said it's like, I don't know how this is going to happen, but, you know, we used to think the world was flat and now we don't. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when and the timing and all this other stuff. And I don't think that the powers that were or the powers that be, however you want to consider it, I don't think they have the full say anymore, in my opinion. I think that's why things are changing. The energies are changing, spirituality is changing, consciousness is changing. And I think there's a lot of other game players that are now here, because if we bring spirituality into it, and as we all raise in a vibratory frequency, now we're meeting up with these higher vibratory beings, if you want to call them that, when you're talking about UFOs. And now all of a sudden, they may have an influence that they couldn't have before. So this gets into a whole other realm of research that we just really didn't get into.
Yeah, and Gary, I'm sure that that you're maybe seeing this as people are going on your trips and stuff and realizing that the pyramids are just not a bunch of rocks stacked on top of each other.
Well, yeah, that's certainly true. And in fact, the bent pyramid, which has got the two angles, and the archaeologists say, oh, well, it was a mistake. Well, when you go inside, you can understand why it's got the two angles, and my Egyptian friends have got a whole theory, because they see it as all connected to energy and resonance of the structure and sound waves. And what's different about the bent pyramid compared to the other pyramids is it's got two chambers on top of each other, and so the angles affecting the resonance, in their opinion. So there's a very good reason why that it's got the two different angles. And it also had a huge shaft going up to the top of the pyramid that fresh air was coming in. So out of all of the pyramids I've been in, I would say that's the one that's most like a machine, and it's a bit of a death trap, so it's closed to most people for a good reason, probably.
But you've been inside.
Yeah, it was about 200 feet backwards down a tunnel that I had to crawl backwards on all fours, and they wouldn't turn the electricity on for us, so we just had our torches descending into the gloom, and hundreds and hundreds of bats had moved in, but they're just like furry winged mice, so I wasn't too worried about them. And yeah, we had a good 2-hour exploration inside, and I think the guard came down to try and find us, but he didn't have a torch, so there was no way for him to climb up this huge wooden staircase they'd put in and then climb through this little passageway that we'd gone up, and then up a few more staircases. So we had about 2 hours inside, and it just doesn't make sense as a tomb from any kind of logical way of looking at it.
How big were the chambers inside that pyramid?
Massive. The staircase we went up was probably 60 feet high, I would say, and that was the lower chamber. And then we scrambled up a sort of slope that they'd carved out at a later date, probably widened it, and that was about 10-15 feet. And then across some narrow floorboards that were over a huge hole, and then there was a ladder, and we climbed up to the top of that ladder, so that's another 8 feet. And then we looked up into the top of this other huge chamber that was about 20 or 30 feet high, and my friend said, oh, look, the ceiling's black in here. And I said, I don't think the ceiling's black, it's just because it was slightly moving, because it was just covered with bats. So
okay, that would scare me a little.
You had an Indiana Jones moment there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been earning my stripes on my adventures. Yeah, I've added a couple of Indianas, and well, the picture I had coming into my head was that all the bats were going to fly out of the chamber at once, knock us off the ladder and down this huge hole that we'd just gone across the wooden planks on. because we'd gone in there to try and resonate the chambers, because a lot of them resonate to sound and they've got different tones.
Were you just going to resonate just with voice, or did you bring technology with you?
I can do it with my voice. I can tone in the king's chamber and power up the chamber so loud that the sound goes all the way 300 feet to the entrance. So,
did you bring anything with you to measure that effect?
I've recorded it, and I've just got connected to somebody that's started to look at the subsonic effects of ancient sites, because there is definitely something going on that's just below the sort of audible spectrum, but you can. Well, there was a huge box in the Serapeum that's just been opened in Egypt, which has these kind of 80, 100-ton boxes inside that are very mysterious, and one of the big sort of smoking guns, because they'd be very difficult to reproduce today. And when we were allowed to climb inside one, I could resonate it, and it had the kind of air pressure coming off of the box, and the lady that was inside with me said it felt like she was descending in an aircraft. And I think the side effect of it is that it does have a kind of effect on you like sound healing. I don't think that's the original purpose for the boxes. They might have been generating some field that kind of went out over the area, say, for example. But they can help us today in the same way that sound healing and gong baths, that kind of thing, can.
So, like I said, more than just a bunch of stones piled on each other. Joseph, you wanted to say something?
Well, yeah, you know what's interesting is we're talking about how all this information could be that first domino to drop about free energy, because that's where the subject is. And what Gary's talking about is also what Michael Tellinger is talking about in South Africa, and other people across the planet are talking about this ancient, what we consider ancient technology. And if we were ever told the truth about what these sites were for, and Michael, I'm sure, I know you've had him on your show before, Scott, so maybe you could talk a little bit more about it, but he does talk about the areas in South Africa where the stones are piled up, and they actually have measurement of the frequencies and sound, and maybe you could go into that a little bit.
I could, actually, but Michael was actually going to pop on today on this chat. But he had, when I talked to him, he had been up for 20 hours, and he's like, I'll try. And Klaus Don was also going to pop in, but he said it might be running too late for him. But I just sent Michael a message to see if he pops on. But go ahead, Yaya, sorry.
No, I was just asking Wade if he had thoughts on the idea of any what he was hearing regarding either the sonic stuff or
what stuff?
Well, just talking about sound and the effect of sound on consciousness, or also the experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I'll tell you, it's a big mysterious universe, and frequency and sound, and again the frequencies related to free energy, etc. I'm sure they're all related, But again, I wouldn't call myself a specialist who's worked a whole lot with some of that, but I know resonant frequencies, rife. There's just so many areas where resonant frequencies become really important, and a lot of free energy. Again, one of the things that I've noticed in studying a lot of these areas, it's the dynamics. It's really not the artifacts so much, but it's the dynamics and how they, the dynamics of them rather than the objects themselves, which is where the interesting stuff's happening.
Yeah, a lot of the research that's going on right now, and this might be speculation, but I would speculate that, we're wondering how did some of these big stones of so many tons, such as Gary's talking about in Egypt, how did they put them into place? How did they move them? And when you look at the current things that you can even see on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet that show you when you change the frequency and you put sand on this vibrating plate, it changes the various shapes. And so, the speculation may be that they used some type of sound energy, which may have been, gathered from specific stones put um, in a certain way, or geographical on ley lines, or I mean, there's lots of different things, different theories out there. But is that a possibility, Gary? In your research, have you seen anything in Egypt that would suggest that they used such a thing as like sound energy or frequency in order to levitate these types of huge blocks to put them into place?
Well, I have heard stories about the Tibetans using sound in certain
Drum-
patterns to be able to levitate stones and things like that.
That was what I was going to come in on that, because that seemed to be what my last 3 weeks in Egypt was about. First of all, we're assuming that gravity's always been the same on this planet, and I think that might be a big assumption to make because we haven't been able to measure it. But if gravity's always been the same, sound resonance, because they're all, when we're talking about these huge blocks of stone, they've all got crystal in them. Granite, sandstone at Stonehenge has got crystal in it. Peru, Alonte Tambo, Sacsayhuaman. I mean, these are all stones that have got some kind of crystalline structure.
The coral at Coral Castle in Florida?
Don't think that's got crystal in it. Is it coral?
I don't know. That's just another example I thought of.
Might have a very small. He was doing something with magnetism. That's the best guess on Coral Castle.
Well, there's that one story about him. Somebody gave him a boulder out of their yard, and he shows up with a team of horses in a wagon, and just by himself. And the guy goes behind the house to get something, and he comes back, and the guy's got the boulder on the wagon.
Yeah, I
There's
think
that
that
story.
has Hutchinson effect. Also, the gentleman, I think it's from Canada, Scott, the independent researcher, that he adds some kind of electrical frequency with electromagnetics, and he can move bowling balls. And I mean, you see it all over YouTube.
Oh, I know. Hutchison.
Yeah, the Hutchinson effect.
Well, where I was going to go was because anyone that's been to Egypt, I mean, different rules apply in Egypt, and this is one of my areas of research, how consciousness is affected at different points on the planet. And I've been to Iseti, and that's definitely a high vibrational place. Sedona is amazing. Egypt is like Sedona kind of on steroids if you've had a sort of experience down there. And so I thought I'd put my theory to the test. If we're affected by visiting different places on the planet, because some of the temples in Egypt are incredible, what I could do would be go to a very active point on the planet, such as a active volcano, see how I feel at the top of an active volcano compared to a temple in Egypt. I thought that was the kind of acid test for my working theory, that where there's this energy flowing under the surface of the planet, we feel more alive because the planet's more alive. So we went up the Pacaya volcano in Guatemala in October, and wow, yeah, I definitely felt very different. I would call it a kind of a spiritual experience or awakening. And I know how I feel in Egypt. And when I come back to the West, it's like I'm being kind of pulled downwards, my awareness. I have to constantly try and sort of fight against this downward pull to stay at my best, because I can compare myself to how I know I am. And so the last trip in Egypt in December that I've just got back from a couple of weeks ago was starting to show me that us in a kind, you could say, in a state of heightened awareness, but it's not about an individual. It's about us coming together. And that's what the Tibetans were doing. They were creating sound together to levitate. And I think one of the big areas of research that's going to open up is the power of collective thought. Yeah. Not just one individual, but a few or groups. And that would be my offer.
I agree, totally.
Well, not to sort of piss on your parade here, Gary, but just a bit of a question. Like, as somebody who's also sensitive to energy and the energy of places specifically, I've not yet been to Egypt or some of the places you've been to, so I haven't had the experiences of what they feel like. But just one question: when you went to the volcano, did you feel something because you expected to?
Well, I'm trying to get to the bottom of how the kind of inner workings, you could say, or truth as I can best understand it at this state of awareness. So I'm not interested in fooling myself because, I mean, what's the point?
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about earlier. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in your delusions or have a hypothesis and then try and find the evidence. I mean, that's what's happening all the time, isn't it? It's one of the problems we've got. There's evidence that don't support the conclusions, but we're given the conclusion for some reason because there's some kind of an agenda. So I'm doing my best. I mean, that's all I can ever say, to change my opinions. I have theories, ideas I like, some ideas I get slightly attached to, but if something comes along and says, no way, this doesn't ring true to you anymore, then I do my best to adapt.
Yeah, I'd go with that as well.
Well, that's all any of us have too, is that inner barometer against which we measure all of experience, right?
Right. Wade, you're going to be starting a new stage where you're going to be doing more writing. God knows you've got enough of it on your website now. You could probably take a good part of your lifetime just reading Wade's website. It's huge. But you're gonna be doing even more writing now. I mean, you're gonna specifically focus on it.
Well, again, I think I discussed it. I've discussed it in interviews with you, etc. But
you haven't discussed it in the pub before.
That's right. So here we are, hoist a brew. But in 2002, when I kind of finished my site, I didn't know anything about Bucky Fuller at all. Other than the dome. And so people talk about the dome. But anyway, one of Fuller's pupils, who I was in contact with at the time, he looks at my site and he goes, "Oh, you're a comprehensivist." And I'm going, "What does that mean?" I had no idea. And so anyway, I started reading some of Fuller, and then all sorts of light bulbs went off, and it's kind of like I could see that I was a seat of the britches comprehensivist without any really training. And so anyway, what happened is that when I realized that, I took a much more paradigmatic view of the situation. And my first thought was, if I only had 3 years to rewrite my site, but I don't have that time. And so, but what's happened in the last 10 years is I've been doing, occasional essays and stuff, but reading a lot, studying a lot, particularly on the science end of things, but really with a generalist comprehensivist perspective. And essentially I've been, for the last 5-6 years, I've been really doing a lot of study with this essay coming up in mind. And so anyway, we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and I'm going to be taking several months off to do that this year. So we'll see how it goes. And then what I hope to do from that is to start trying to build a comprehensive conversation. That's really what my intent is. I don't, at best, I mean, how to say it? I hope it's just kind of helps form us kind of a support awareness for the real heroes that are going to do something. I mean, that's kind of what I'm really, if you had asked me what my greatest fantasy for that would be, it would be something like that. It would be to form a support-based awareness that an Adam or a Dennis or these kind of people, they're not out there alone in the wilderness, them versus Godzilla. That's what my hope is.
So what form do you see this comprehensive conversation taking?
What form?
Yeah, how does it happen? How is that made manifest in the world? A comprehensivist conversation that you see. Comprehensivist
conversation by definition is going to be pretty multidisciplinary. It's got to be pretty cerebral. I mean, again, the heart needs to lead. If the heart doesn't lead, it's going nowhere. At the same time, it's going to be pretty cerebral and pretty interdisciplinary. And what I'm hoping comes out of that is an awareness of the central role that energy plays in everything. And from that point, maybe enough people can keep their eye on the ball to where, when a Dennis or an Adam or somebody is making these statements, it's not just something that, bounces off the heads of some people and they sort of free energy. Yeah, I heard about that once. Hopefully it's going to be a much more, involved awareness, a much more comprehensive awareness that can really keep its eye on the ball. Because that's what that's the thing I noticed. I mean, all the efforts that I was involved in over the years, and it's like, as long as, Dennis was starting to pull the $quadrillion rabbit out of his hat, there were a lot of people watching. But as soon as they took us out, they all went back to watching TV, and I was going, man, this is, we need something better than that. And so and again, I've been groping at this for 20 some years, and so anyway, I have no idea if it's really going to be successful, but I've decided that I'm going to try.
Well, you know what? It sounds like it could be a whole pile of really cool pub conversations.
It could be. Yeah.
Bring them all here. We'll have a bunch. We'll have a series of them.
Yeah, he's been trying to sort of preach to the converted.
I think that's all you can ever do. I think that's all you can ever do to some extent. Anybody who your message reaches it because they're ready to hear it.
And I'll agree with that in that, how to say it, if you are hooked into the conventional, idea management of the world, my stuff looks like insanity. And at the same time, for somebody who has had some kind of experience that allowed them to see beyond their conditioning, and it can happen in many different areas, but once they can see that and pass that, then I think they may be ready to at least grab a hold of something that is, I think, important. And that's one of the things I noticed was that, there's alternatives. It's a pretty big world of alternatives, isn't it? I mean, there's a huge world of alternatives with all the different theories, et cetera. And it's a thing of, but only in the energy business does Godzilla offer you $1 billion to go away. And there's a very good reason why he does that. And that's the one where Godzilla knows it's the big one, and so I'm hoping that more people can understand that in a very comprehensive framework to where it's not just, again, it's going to have a lot of dimensions to it. And I think the more dimensions that are there, the more meat there is, that the more it's going to lodge in people's awareness in the way that I think is going to be valuable to us getting over the hump. I mean, that really is that's kind of what I'm going to try to do. And I don't know if it's going to work or not. And
do you think,
kind of, we'll see.
Do any of you think that we'll see any significant change in the next, say, 30 years? Change as a movement toward this, the release of free energy, or do any of you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
I think it'll be sooner than later, really.
Yeah. Well, I think the normal kind of theory is that if there is a growing momentum, there's a tipping point. And I mean, things are happening so quickly, I think it's hard for any of us to see 30 years from now.
Well, one of the things I was heartened to hear about, and I don't remember exactly where I heard this, but you guys know about Zbigniew Brzezinski, yes? He's currently, I think he's still an advisor to Barack Obama. He was the guy that wrote the Grand Chessboard back in the 70s. He was in the cabinet of Jimmy Carter when he was in power.
This guy helped bait the Soviet Union into invading Afghanistan.
Yeah. But he said something recently in an interview someplace that, before it was easier to kill 100 million people before it was easier to change the minds of 100 million people or 1 million people. But now with the internet, it's actually much, much harder. And so what he was essentially saying is it's getting harder and harder to manipulate people now. And to mislead them through media or through various other things. He says it's now easier to kill 1 million people than it is to try to manipulate them. So I see that's a good thing. I think that they're...
Oh, that's great news. That's great news. That's interesting, yeah.
I can't remember. I have to find that quote
as they don't try to just kill 1 million people because they can't convince them to do what they want.
Well, maybe that's why we get genetically modified food being easily made available. I don't know.
Well, yeah. And I'll just say this, guys. I mean, back... 26 years ago or something, when I was in my free energy salad days, we were so ignorant of our predecessors. We were so ignorant of what was going on. And for a brief time, we were kind of a mecca for people who have been through these events before they wiped us out. But it's a thing where how much has changed in 26 years? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, that I could be actually talking with you guys like this. and it's going to be posted on the internet, and people all over the world can look at that, I would say yes. It's definitely information is so much more available than it used to be, which is a good thing, very good thing.
Which is a good thing.
Yes.
And I was going to say, Joseph, you see similarities here with the mainstream healthcare and alternative healthcare. It's a very mainstream healthcare is a very big rock.
Yeah, as above, so below. We're talking about energy, but we could move into big farm easily, and you'd see the same thing. It's all about control, manipulation, and those who have the control and the money, the power, they manipulate the system or the game, if you want to call it that. However, a mainstream practitioner wouldn't be able to come on the air like this years ago, and we wouldn't be able to talk about free energy years ago. So we were asking the question, what do we see currently that is any different than years ago? That's huge. Just like Wade said. I was going to bring that up. I'm glad he said it. People are more and more able to come out and talk about it, and the various people that I've interviewed, I haven't seen that they were slandered as much or smeared as much anymore. It's almost like, I don't know if you want to call it a free ride. The information's out there. So what they're probably thinking is, hey, the information's hidden in plain sight. If you have the eyes to see it, then so be it. And if you don't, then it'll just glide right by you.
Well, as far as medical research is going, we all know how they crushed Rife, how they crushed Reich, and many others. They just wiped them out. They threw them in. Didn't Reich die in prison?
No. Reich did, but Rife was a broken man after the AMA got done with him.
Yeah, I knew Reich died in prison, but I thought it was somebody else. But yeah, Rife was just they destroyed his microscope, they destroyed his lab. But then
he fled to Mexico.
But then you look at stories like, for example, Barry Marshall, and I don't remember his partner's name, who discovered Helicobacter pylori and its connection to ulcers, and how back in the 80s they tried to show their work to the mainstream medical establishment, and they were ridiculed. They tried to laugh them out of existence, and it wasn't until Barry Marshall drank a beaker of Helicobacter pylori, it documented all this, gave himself an ulcer, and then cured his ulcer with Pepto-Bismol and antibiotic. After that, he was accepted, and now Tagamet is not an ulcer drug anymore; it's just an antacid. So it took him about 10 years, but he eventually got accepted, and I think I think there's room for change in the medical field. But like you said, Wade, in the free energy establishment is the only place where they try to buy you out. In medical research or in the health field, they just crush you. They crush you.
They wipe you out.
They destroy your medical your capability. One guy I was heartened to find out is Stanislaw Brzezinski. In Texas, he has his antineoplastin therapy for cancer, and they have been trying to wipe him out forever. They tried to work with him, then they tried to steal his technology. He's still going.
Yeah, he's been at it for like 40 years, I think. Yeah, long time.
And it's fantastically effective. So maybe they're not as effective as wiping people out anymore as they once were.
And again, internet, more access to information, et cetera, has been very valuable. When I would say when we were getting wiped out in Ventura, California back in the 80s, I remember talking to some longtime activists in the field, and they basically said, if you're going to do this stuff, you do it in downtown Manhattan. You want as many eyeballs on you as possible, and that's your best protection. And again, the internet's been providing a lot of that.
I'd also like to add that we were talking about energy here, and we kind of alluded to some of the people that were on the not so good side, so to speak, have maybe jumped the fence, and they've seen that, maybe this isn't a good idea for maybe not the here and now, but what about my children and my grandchildren and all the other implications for the planet and everything else? The writing's on the wall, basically, and somebody has to stand up, and the people that know certain things, probably have a conscience to them that's like bugging them. And I mean, I can just imagine some of the horrific things that have happened that are on some of the minds of the people that were in charge. So, you know what I'm saying? I mean, at one point, all that has to be an influence and change as well. So the people that may have been smearing campaigns and all these types of things, I would say that there's a trend that's going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
In a positive.
That's why I call them the so-called white hats. Exactly. There are people who used to be with the dark hat program that they don't want to play anymore. I mean,
right.
That's happening. Yep. So because it's crazy. It's crazy.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. And you know what? This happens in all areas. It happens and we have people that have come across that. Wade's come across it. Joseph have come across it in the sort of direction he's taken in his life. Gary, I'm sure he's come across it with the people he's come in contact with in the areas that he's been covering, and the people that he works with have been covering. They get a lot of that. Don't worry, they're getting a lot of "you're nuts, dude." You know.
Oh yeah.
And if you try to talk to people about it, you know, you can probably see, Gary, I'm sure you can see the people in the audience that when you're doing these events that are sort of squinting their eyes and they've got their arms folded across their chest and they're like, yeah, right, buddy.
Well, I try and do my presentation in the kind of balanced way, so there's something for everyone. And you can adjust, can't you, to the audience. I think that's one thing to know, and asking a few questions to gauge where people are at. And know when you go into the deeper stuff, not everyone's going to be able to go with you. So you just have to try and share what's helped you, I think, on the journey. I try and pull on my journey, what's helped me, shared experiences with others, rather than just Gary's insane perspective. I think it's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, hey Scott, you know, it's funny you're mentioning conferences, and I just spoke at MUFON conference in October in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, and I had never spoke at an audience that it was complete and utter silence. Like, they were so floored by the information that I was putting, and they were so tuned in and keyed in, and afterwards they all like flocked to me to get more information about what I was putting together and what I was saying. And it wasn't anything to me that was unique, but to them it was. It was almost like it was this aha moment. The energy was just right in the audience, and they all got it. And they're like, wow, this is actually factual information that is presented in such a way that it kind of pulls everything together. And that's what I was talking about, different pieces of the puzzle. And when you can put it together, you know, some of the people may have not been on the same wavelength as where I was, and some people may have been, of course, way ahead of where I'm at right now. But sometimes when you're speaking, it might be that one word or that one phrase that plants a seed, and later on, those individuals will come back to you. And I've had several emails, you know, like years later, I did a conference, and years later, they've come back and said, oh my God, I understand what you were saying. I didn't get it at the time, but you planted the seed to allow me to research and get some of this information for myself, and now I get it. So
they come back like 3 or 4 years later and go, okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're way ahead. They're talking to you about kind of like Wade's talking about free energy and things that I probably wouldn't get because it's not my genre. But it's just amazing that some of these really highly intelligent people, I mean, everybody that you have on the line right here, except for myself, of course, are so tuned in, and they have their own specialty. And to me, it's like, I feel privileged to be on this call. And I like, if I would pull myself outside of the situation as an outsider looking onto this call, it's like, wow, this is really exciting. These people coming together to kind of enlighten humanity, because we're all a part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suspect we all feel the same way, Joseph.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting when you get a bunch of people who may not be completely in agreement with everything everybody's saying, but we seem to, I would say we're 90%, 99% in agreement with what we're talking about. But some of the people are coming at it from different angles. So Gary does the stuff in Egypt. Joseph does the alternative medicine stuff. Wade does free energy things.
Well, Wade,
We've got Harley on the line, and Harley is from a military background, and he worked on some, Black Op projects. He's not said anything yet, but
that's another thing. Speaking of that, that would be great to get him on the call, because I'll tell you what, some of the military people that I've seen over the years as a family practitioner, they are waking up so much more now and it's amazing what they're telling me when they're coming in. I mean, before it was just like, almost robotic, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, because thank God for our soldiers for everything that they've done up to this point, but they're coming in with a higher consciousness and awareness and saying, hey, this isn't right. These things, instead of kind of like following the rules, that they're actually questioning. So I don't know if you've talked to people, or anybody on this call has talked to police officers or military people or that have woken up, so to speak. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, well, it's too bad Flo's not here. She's had experience with people like this too, and I know Harley is, but I think maybe Harley's having some sound card issues. He can't speak today, sadly, unless he can. I don't know, but
Harley, can you say anything? Is your
I'm
mic
here. I'm here. How does this sound? I know it's crackly.
Yeah, it is a little bit, but that's okay. Well, Harley's been in the military. I mean, Harley was, deep in, top secret programs and stuff. And, he's been looking into these areas for just several years now. So there's one example of a military guy who's went, hold on here a minute. There's more going on here in the world than I was, Plus he's had experiences in those areas that have, been awakening, as it were.
Yeah, and was that Joseph that was just speaking?
Yes, Joseph.
Okay, I'll give you one example. And by the way, I'm constantly waking up based on my own past experiences from the military on. And I'm constantly waking up more and more. I mean, it's like overwhelming. But I've been, I actually started waking up, years ago, when I very first, started listening to Art Bell when he, was broadcasting from a private radio station before he became, network, oriented. Anyway, what I wanted to say, about, well, let me put it this way. When I was in the Air Force, and this was, from the 70s to the mid 80s, okay, you are military property. You are government property, and everybody knows this. Okay, we were forced to, for example, take flu shots, and remember now, I'm talking about way back in the 70s, and every time I can't even explain to you how that affected me. Every time I got a flu shot, I became sick, and there was a couple of times that I actually ended up having to go to the hospital, the base hospital, because of it. But they still, every year would force me to take those shots. When I finally left the Air Force in the mid 80s, I have refused to take a flu shot ever since. I've never had one, and I can honestly say that I have never had the flu. I have caught pneumonia. That's a different story, but I have never had the flu.
Well, a lot of people started waking up to things due to medical issues that they have, and they find a different way around things. But so you sort of come. Actually, before we get there, Harley, Gary has to leave. He's over in London, and sounds like he's getting kind of sleepy. It's a little after midnight there, so.
Yeah, just hit midnight and my bed's starting to call, so I'm afraid I'd love to stay, but I'm getting past my best, so I'm probably better off leaving you guys to it.
Well, thanks a lot for coming out and adding as much as you have done to this conversation, and come back to another pub, please do.
Be happy
Thanks,
to.
Gary.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Gary.
And well, anyone listening can connect to me on Facebook. I've got a group on there, and my website's all under Infinite Connections.
So your website is Sorry, say again. Your website is
infinite-connections.co.uk, and that's my kind of tours and conferences that I'm involved with. And the Facebook group, we have kind of lively discussions on there. Is Infinite Connections again. And you can find me under Gary Evans, probably friends with Scott, I think.
Yeah, I will. I will be having in it because Gary's so interesting himself. I will be having a Spectrum Radio Network interview with Gary, talking about all of his adventures. But I figured he'd be having some fun today in the pub where we're just randomly talking about everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey,
I look forward
Scott,
to it.
Do you have Gary's web address?
I do. I'll send it to you.
Okay. I was going to ask Gary if he'd type it in the window here, so
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
be sure and have it for posting.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut and run, but yeah, hopefully speak to you all again soon.
Sure.
Thanks.
Anytime.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. That was great.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
Gary.
Bye.
Well, that was very cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the pub, right? People come, they go. We're
Yep.
very open here. You can, even if like we're the last, however long, 10 minutes of the talk, come on in. We welcome anybody and everybody.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's a very open format we've got. So, yeehaw.
Yeah,
Well,
not anybody, okay?
Yeah, anybody who knows Reaver and respects Reaver can come.
He'll straighten them out if they don't.
That's right.
Yeah, fear me and
Hey, wait a
all that.
Hold on a second, Reaver. We never asked you. Was there one event that sort of woke you up to the bigger picture, the bigger reality, or were you one of those people who's always kind of wired to see things differently than everybody else?
No, it was some kind of, it's like the Matrix movie. There's a splinter in your mind, and that was something that was bugging me. So I took that ball and ran with it.
So it was really the Matrix in that movie that sort of put that bug in your head. But before that, was
No. It
Said it was like that.
said it was like that. Yeah, but in fact,
okay.
So it was a certain event, but it wasn't really a single event. It was something in the back of your head going, I don't know, this doesn't. The world is sort of different than it's portrayed.
Yeah, I had that feeling that, I was thinking to myself, okay, fine, there are these explanations, when you ask what's wrong with this planet, and then people tell you, well, it's, politics and corruption and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is very obvious to me. But there must be something else, and it was like a strange feeling for me. So I just took the ball and ran with it, and then at some point I was looking on the internet, the stuff like, how does the world really work? And I came across stuff like the Zeitgeist. How do you pronounce that shit?
Zeitgeist.
Yes, Zeitgeist. Oh, fuck. Well, yeah, I came across that first. It was like my
Wake-up call.
wake-up call, yeah. Yeah, and so it has been like a gradual, oh fuck, can't talk properly.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Was the first forum you joined? What was the first forum you joined?
The first, It was an atheist forum.
Which one?
Well, if you're talking about an alternative forum, it was Nexus first.
Okay, that's the first time you sort of showed up on that scene. Was at Nexus then?
Yeah.
And made a big splash, too, if I may say so myself.
Yeah. Jeez.
A very large splash, like a cannonball falling from the sky. A really big one.
Oh yeah, you had a lot of people talking for a long time about what kind of op you were.
Yeah, but that's okay. If anybody hasn't experienced Reaver's posts on Nexus 2012 and Universal Spectrum, I tell you to go read them because he's made a big splash in the alternative field, forum field anyway.
That's the best field, man.
Yeah, well, I agree completely.
Yeah, they were asking me questions like, "Who the fuck is this porn troll?"
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not a troll. Yes, you're a troll. You're on page. No. The page shield theory was the most recent one.
Well, there are still some people I think who might think that here and there.
Yes, no, I'm a team, okay.
Well, having read your posts in, for over a year now, I wouldn't agree with that assessment. But anyway, let's get back to some different areas of discussion. Yeah, you got anything you want to talk about?
Well, actually, no. One of the big questions I asked Wade, I already did about his how he relates to people now, or how he has had trouble relating to people, or not. I think you answered that one before, but I find that over the years it hasn't affected my relationship with my learning what I did hasn't affected my relationship with people a whole lot. I've always been sort of a strange guy and had different ideas. So people started hearing me talk. He's just onto something new now. It's not that, but I do find that it can get increasingly difficult to have small talk about things that people with just strangers out of nowhere about whatever is going on in the newspaper or sports or anything silly like that.
Yeah. That happens to me a lot.
I have no time for that.
I get bored too quickly.
Yeah, I can't talk about sports. As a matter of fact, working on locations in the film industry, I meet a lot of different people because I work on different shows with different crews. And if I run into those guys that all they want to talk about is sports statistics, like they know everything about the team or a bunch of teams, and they have it all written down in their head. I have to walk away. I have to oh yeah, oh wait, gotta go. There's something I need to do.
If you want to make it interesting, you can ask them. You can ask them this: how does it feel to be so stupid?
Jeez.
Yeah, well,
you got to work with these people. You need their help at times. So.
Yeah, but
that's a little.
What I do ask is, I will ask anybody this question. I said, how would you live in a world that didn't have any money? If money didn't exist, what would you do?
Heresy.
Yeah, and all I want is an honest reaction to the question. And a lot of times the honest reaction to the question is, I don't know. Literally, they don't know. It opens an empty void in their head that I've just asked them a question like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? Well, as many as necessary.
Or I like to ask, with the NHL strike that just ended, what would you do if hockey never came back?
I would kill myself.
Well, no, you'd probably paint the house. You'd probably play with your kids, maybe. You'd probably read a book. I don't know.
Turn to alcohol.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But like I said, the number one answer is, I don't know. Or some of them, if they're a linear thinking person, if they think linear, their answer will be, well, what do you mean there's no money? I work hard every day. I expect to be paid. And I go, okay.
Have you come across some people that think that when you ask them that about moneyless lifestyle, that they would think that we are going back to be some kind of barbarians and live on trees and that kind of stuff.
Or they say, oh, utopia. Yeah, right, pal. Yeah.
Well, really,
right.
I think if we're talking about free energy and the existence of free energy, and I know, Wade, you talked about this, that if free energy were to suddenly exist, it would really mean the end of economy, the end of money.
Yes, and in fact, if I may interrupt here, a great segue is that, again, being on this journey for so long, it was all of the different reactions to the idea. And largely on not just the denial side, but all the ways they thought they could happen, et cetera. And again, what I found out was that what they all had in common was a scarcity-based awareness. And free energy would mean abundance. And in fact, we talk about the rackets, the medical racket, the banking rackets, I mean, all the different rackets. In my opinion, this is kind of why it's so closely watched, is that if abundance happened, all the rackets would collapse at the same time.
Yeah, all of them would.
All of them would. They'd all collapse at the same time. And that's why it's such a scary concept to various parties.
Well, I could see environmental types, the ones, especially the useful idiots, the ones who are being led around by UN Agenda 21 and the ones who think, oh, we have to cut our carbon footprint. Well, if you offer them free energy and told them overnight, I think if free energy were to be implemented, you could put a motionless electrical generator in your car, put an electric motor in it, and drive to Tierra del Fuego without ever having to refuel. Now, that's not including, building new flying car type things, which is a byproduct of that as well. But if everybody could suddenly drive their car with no fuel ever again, this solves the carbon dioxide problem. But I bet that you would get a lot of pushback from even the environmental groups saying it would be bad somehow.
Well, in fact, that's anybody who's played the free energy game for very long. And again, I'm talking about way back in the day, a long time ago, 40 years ago, this kind of thing. And again, Brian O'Leary, Dennis, myself, other people, again, the old timers. Initially, you thought your natural allies would be environmentalists. You're kind of going, whoa, those guys would just love this. They're actually the group most hostile.
Oh, I know, yeah.
I mean, and again, everybody who's done it, they get blown away. It totally, Brian couldn't believe it. I mean, in 2001, we were in the governor's office of California trying to get him to think about alternative energy while Enron's raping him. And Brian was telling me about his encounters with some of the biggest names in environmentalism that there is. And he would go, hey, so-and-so, how about free energy? And they would look at him like he had insulted their mother.
Well, what's their argument? What's their argument against it?
Well, I think how to say it, and this is where you see this over and over and over, these various kinds of reactions. And I was going, they're addicted to scarcity. I mean, their whole framework is based on scarcity, so abundance just blasts their whole awareness into smithereens. However, if they ever could articulate the argument, and in fact some have, and basically they're going, well, you would just strip mine the planet, or you'd blow it up with wars. And so it's basically the misuse Pandora's box reaction, and that's what it is. And again, their answers are all austerity. I mean, it's like, let's get rid of 6 billion excess people, let's ride bikes, let's do all these small ball austerity kinds of answers.
Let's all go back 500 years, yeah.
Well, again, that's kind of what their response, And so the whole thing of abundance and again, go watch some Star Trek, you get a glimpse of what we're talking about, and it's amazing. It was amazing that the environmentalists were actually literally the most hostile responses came from them. And again, anybody who's been in this field, you get shocked at first, and again, Dennis and I were so ignorant dealing with environmentalists, et cetera, and then later on, we're trading notes with Brian or other people, and they're going, join the club. That's how it is. And again, initially you just can't believe it. I mean, it blows you away. You can't believe it. But again, this was part of the development of my awareness over the years of, again, so many groups you think would be natural allies, like the free software movement, free software, free energy. Hey, and nobody home there either. And and that was, Brian or me or other people doing this, looking for allies and finding out that there aren't any. And that was the thing that was, as Brian said, that's a lonely journey. It's been a lonely journey. And so, but hope springs eternal, and I think that my opinion is that the people who are going to, let's say, if free energy comes via public activism, there is no one group out there right now that's there. It's not going to be any groups. It's going to be individuals who are going to come together for that purpose. Because at this point, I have seen no group that is amenable to even really thinking about it.
One thing we didn't talk about was one of the other reasons why people that are in the controlling parts of the government or the world probably won't want some of this information and some of this stuff to come out is because they may have done some things that aren't so good for money. And when that information comes out, and I don't want to get too specific because I've heard some things, but can you imagine what people have done for money? Like you say, they offered $1 billion to buy you out. That's one little thing. That's not even a big thing, but yep. Harley may be able to speak of this because in the military, I'm sure that money was thrown around and you know what, you'll do this because it's an order. Well, whenever you're ordered to do something, even though that you don't think it's a good idea, you have your career, you have your family that you're trying to support. And if this information would come out, it would threaten them and even though they didn't want to do it, they were ordered to do it. So some of the reason why some of this information won't come out is because of fear of retaliation and fear of the public going after some of these people for some of the heinous things that have happened. The truth, that will really happen. Like 9/11 and things like that, when the truth comes out on these things, can you imagine?
Well, that raises an interesting point that bridges really the healing paradigm and the free energy paradigm. If suddenly free energy becomes quickly or very soon becomes available, or it suddenly becomes clear that, yes, cancer has been curable for at least 100 years, and people have been curing their own cancers in so many ways for a very long time. If suddenly this becomes mainstream knowledge, does the reactions from the masses suddenly become, you mean that I didn't have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for fuel and it was held back? Or you mean my mother didn't have to die from cancer? So you're going to have a whole lot of people that will resist it because or want revenge on somebody, right, because suddenly this stuff is available and it hasn't been before. I think that's a problem yeah. This is why one of the reasons why consciousness and spirituality has to evolve too. Exactly.
That's what I was just going to say, Yaya, that Wade had it right in that, until we have, and I think this is the point where this is the tipping point that maybe Gary was talking about, that this 2012 phenomenon, the 2013 that we're into now, we had to reach this tipping point in this consciousness because we are a collective, and the more people that think about one thing at one time, it becomes your reality. And I think as this year goes on, I think that's why we're seeing more and more things happen in a positive way. But ideally, what has to happen in a spiritual sense is, you have to forgive and just say, you know what? In my opinion, right now, I'm like, you know what? I don't care what comes out. Let it all come out. I'm not going to feel vengeful. I'll probably have to take a minute and take a sigh of relief and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe the horrific things that have happened. But you know what? I'm glad it came out. Now let's move in a positive direction. I'm not going to be going after somebody with a gun and shooting them because that just perpetuates the problem.
That's I can see that's nice, but for people to get something like that, it's very, very hard. I mean, there's a massive psychological game going on, and for these people, it's as you've been saying, it's do or die. It's to offer them this kind of alternatives. You're asking them to leave everything they know behind, and for them that equals some sort of bizarre death.
Or you're asking them to give up a big, huge part of their identity, of what they're identified with.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
Like I said earlier, what are you willing to give up? That's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you talk about, let's, forgive. And, okay, that's fine, but how do you make these people see that? That's a challenge.
Well, that's the consciousness we were talking about. Like once you raise to a certain awareness and consciousness, you know that, the law of attraction, what you put out is what you're bringing back to yourself. So all this awareness allows you to think critically and be like, okay, if I shoot this person, that negativity is going to come back on me. So that just keeps perpetuating the problem. And I think where we need to go in the direction of is debt forgiveness, all this other kind of stuff. The people that have been perpetuating the problem, it's almost like a restart or a fresh start type of a mentality is what we need, and then go from there.
And that raises an interesting point. The fresh start or the clean slate mentality, I think, is a good idea. But does it require that everything fail? Does it require that suddenly all the banks fail, or there's no NFL games or hockey being played anymore?
You're never going to get rid of the NFL.
Walmart shelves are empty. Is that going to be what's required in order for this clean slate to happen? Are people going to have to massively fail like that?
Well, look at 9/11. Before that, we were doing our daily thing, going to school, going to work, doing our thing, even though it was a negative shocker to our community as a whole. The whole world saw that. It was something horrific that happened, but what happened out of that? The blessings that came out of that are people came together. People were coming from other states, other nations to come and help New York City. They were sending prayers and everything like that. So
Katrina,
I mean, all these horrific things that have happened, humanity has come together at the worst imaginable things that have happened. And a lot of times, we have to hit rock bottom, but I don't think it has to happen that way. But notoriously, humanity, I mean, look at our history. I think it's what has happened.
Wade.
Can I?
Yeah, Wade, go ahead.
Okay. So this is all near and dear to my heart. This kind of what we're talking about right now. And again, I'll start getting some kind of specific stuff about some of this. So yes, it's not easy. I think, some old, saying from Asia, it's not easy to get off, from the tiger, riding the tiger, something like that. How's that go? Something about it. If you're riding a tiger, it's not easy to get off. And that is, Godzilla, etc. That's part of what they're facing is that. And again, I have to be a little circumspect here, but one of the things that they've been doing is looking to, they cannot afford to be the people that are on stage bringing this stuff forward. And so what they have been doing is, again, like my buddy, they have been recruiting people. I'll use that loosely, but as a thing of there are people who are out there on the leading edge who have been sort of tagged as this will be the white knight on the steed that does it. However, again, like I said, it's not because they're such a talented knight, but that they have been tagged as a way that this can come forward, and the people. They would love that if free energy comes out, they would love to put out the cover story that it was some tinkerer extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what they that's what they really want. And they can slink away into the shadows and and those tough questions that you're talking about aren't asked.
Right.
Okay?
We'll support you, but if you mention our names, you're dead.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. Once that first domino drops and we know that free energy, now everybody has the resources to go and research whatever they want, whatever their heart's desires. They can work into whatever they want. They can also find out and go back and say, okay, what's the truth of the matter here? Where did this develop? Oh, let's follow the money. Or, oh, what is this technology that's here? Oh, wait a minute. 300,000 years ago, humanity was in existence when in fact Catholicism says that it's anywhere from 5 to 15,000 years. All this stuff that's been hidden it's the unveiling. I think that's what's going to happen. So I think that's what's fearful also is that I don't think there's any way that the beings or the people making those poor decisions or negative things in control can get out of it freely without other people eventually finding out who did what and why.
I think, yes, I think so. And what I'll say is Brian, I don't think it was Brian's original idea, but you talk about, again, we talk about this tipping point, okay? And the tipping point is in our hearts. That's where the tipping point is.
Yes.
And the difference between wanting to string up the bad guys and forgiving the bad guys is the difference between thinking like a victim and thinking like a creator. Okay.
Right.
And
Yes,
when all this stuff comes out, I think the most important thing for everybody is to ask themselves, what part did they play?
Right.
And we all forgive ourselves for this, or acknowledge our role in creating it, and I think then and only then can we create something new.
Absolutely, Wade. I totally agree with you. In the spiritual sense, I mean, knowing that we're spiritual beings living out a human experience, and knowing that we've incarnated into play each individual part without opposition, there's no growth. So without the bad guys that have done whatever, there are a lot of blessings that happen. There's a lot of soul growth or conscious growth that needed to happen, and those people were in places to make that happen. So if you stand outside your physical self and the ego mind and you look at it as what it is, it's all consciousness. Everything is energy. We've just come here to play a part, and in my opinion anyway, I think that everybody is equal. There is no, good or bad. I think there's just opposition, and it was to catapult us where we are now and where we're going.
Right. And there's an old saying, the universe will never give you anything more than you can handle on your shoulders. Right. And there's another thing I'd like to add to that. Grow wider shoulders.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They got to be wide for what's coming. Like, can you imagine? I always like to ask that question. What if free energy came out? Say the president came on, the United States tomorrow during this inauguration tomorrow, and he comes out and he says, guess what? ETs exist. The technology's there. There is free energy. How would that turn everybody's, how could they possibly come out? Because we have so many different people with various soul growths and understandings and awarenesses. I mean, that would be like a 9/11, because to some people that have eyes to see it, it's like, oh, thank God we're vindicated. Other people are like, oh my God, ETs exist. I'm going to go kill myself because they're going to come and eat us like all the movies have showed us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The various levels of awareness right here, right now, it's a great time to be alive and witness all this is the best way I can say it.
Yeah, and it's always been a great time to be alive.
I'm so cynical, man.
You don't see that happening, Reaver? Go ahead, Harley, sorry.
No, I was chuckling to myself. I was going to say, people are going to have to either learn to grow wider shoulders or larger asses.
Or larger asses.
I think Reaver agrees with you there.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is
well, we're just getting our asses kicked, and it's just going to get worse if people
right.
start waking
Yeah,
up.
we'll be able to absorb the hits we're going to be taking as time goes on. But I look at it this way. Eventually, whether anybody likes it or not, humans have to go to space. This is just my pet thing. We should have been there 100 years ago. But eventually, the rock that's being, the big boulder, they push a boulder up a hill. Well, the thing is, the boulder's getting bigger. And the powers that used to be can only hold that boulder up for so long. And eventually, it's just going to get too big and it's going to roll downhill. It's going to get there, but unfortunately, Godzilla has a lot of power. But I think the power's slipping away, and it's coming from many different areas. And one of those areas is the fact that people are becoming more aware of this stuff. They're sneaking it in movies, they're sneaking it in TV shows. Certainly not Jersey Shore, but they are sneaking the information in there.
Well, could
right?
all this just be seen as an evolutionary drive?
Sure. Why not?
See, the thing for me it's that it's not that I'm all doom and gloom about this, but I just don't jump in the bandwagon of a cosmic wave coming to save us or changing times. My view on it, it's we have to put effort into it. We are the ones who have to change it, and that takes effort, that takes time, it takes thinking, and I don't know, maybe we will all die of old age, and we won't see the how can I put it? We won't see the results of that work. It will take many generations, I think, for it to materialize. Something that could last for a long, long time. Something very positive.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because what I see happening is, yes, well, I see, one thing I do see is an acceleration in evolution. Like I think somebody said before, look how far we've come in the last 20, 30 years. But I also think that there is almost, for lack of a better term, maybe a change in the cosmic background flux that has us all wired and connected together. I think there's not only just an evolution in the way we're seeing things, but I think there's a change in sort of the universe that creates our nature that is causing us to evolve in ways that we haven't experienced before. It's not a magical thing. It's not some ET that's meddling with us. I really think it's, people who talk about evolution have talked about how sometimes evolution happens in giant leaps very quickly. And they point to the evolution of a particular lizard that's living in Italy or something, about how it overnight it changed from one food that disappeared to eating another food that previous to that was toxic to the animal, and suddenly it's an abundance of a new food. I do think it is possible for us to be changed in such a way that causes us to evolve very quickly in a direction, and I think that's been happening.
I think there's a theory by going on with that, and it's been rejected a lot by the mainstream academia. From I think his name is Rupert Sheldrake, I think, and it goes along it's something like that, about reaching some. Well, it goes along the line. It's something similar to what you were saying.
Yeah, I will punctuated equilibrium.
No, it's
or the 100th monkey
resonance, I think.
Morphic resonance, or the 100th monkey thing.
Yeah,
it's not the same thing. As far as I know, Sheldrake doesn't talk about the monkey effect, but it's all right. It's something similar.
Okay.
Well, what about our missing link? I mean, we have fossil records that go back, and then all of a sudden, poof, we go from this to that, and here we are, human beings. So, if we already see it within the fossil records, why couldn't it happen now or in the near future?
Yeah, it's happened in the past on this planet.
Right.
Therefore it could happen again, and has happened probably multiple times. I got to tell you, if you see the paintings back from the 15th century and 16th century, I look at those people and I go, wow, that doesn't look like anybody on the planet today I've ever come across. The paintings, the profiles of people where they paint them, they have themselves painted to put up on a wall back in Victorian times and all of that.
Portraits.
I look at all those pictures and I'm like, you know what? They look like sort of different humans. I think that sort of evolutionary jump has happened subtly over time.
Or you look at the furniture that they used back in the 1500s. It was tiny. The chairs, the people were tiny.
It's not only the missing link. If I can recall, there was a period, at least one period in our known evolution, where at least two species were present during the same time period, according to the records, and that is odd too, if you think about it.
Yep.
Silence.
We're in deep thought. Wade, do you want to chime in?
Oh, so how to say it? In fact, one of the things I've been doing a lot for this upcoming essay is reading a lot of what I call white science, which is the mainstream anthropology and the findings, et cetera. And anyway, it's how to say it? It's the thing of looking at the human journey, et cetera. And the fossil record actually makes sense. It makes sense in a lot of ways. And that it doesn't have, I don't think the fossil record needs to be explained by interventions. I don't think so. But, a lot of the links, again, 50 years ago, they talked about the missing link, but anymore it's like linklets. It's just, again, the fossil record is pretty sparse. For the human line. And so that's part of the problem they've been having. And once in a while they find a Lucy or something. Pardon?
On that line, Wade, how about, we might not have all the accurate information from our history.
Oh God. Well, that's kind of one of the primary, that's a big thrust of my work is the history. That's an interesting idea, and yeah, there's, I have not heard, and Scott, I don't run around in these circles very much, but I've never heard of a classified dig. I just never heard of one. And you hear some stories, but I've never heard of like a dig being classified.
Well, maybe
I have.
Have you?
Before the fact or after a discovery's been made?
After a discovery's been made.
After a discovery's been made.
Yep. I've also heard of and experienced and was on the front line of being aware of the entire Giza Plateau being cleared. Just cleared. Any research people, any archaeologists, anybody in the area, they just cleared the whole damn area. The whole Giza Plateau was cleared for about several weeks.
Well, I've heard of a classified dig, and I haven't thought about this in so darn long I can't recall it really well. But there's a whole area of the Grand Canyon in Arizona, I believe, that's completely closed to the public.
A whole area of the Grand Canyon that's closed to the public, really?
Yeah, it's been so long since I've even.
I heard that recently.
Yeah, I'm sure you could do a search on that. You'll find some information.
I think they found some giant skeletons.
It was well, I read something about that. I don't know how true that was, but the story I'm referring to was
Harley, you're gonna have to move the mic closer to your mouth, dude. It's really breaking up.
Either that or the problem with your sound card is getting worse and your voice is fading.
Okay, can you hear me?
Barely, or very quiet.
Yeah, put the mic in your mouth and chew on it.
You need to contact the military and ask them for a new PC.
Anyway, what I'm referring to is where they found Egyptian type ruins in the Grand Canyon, and this was all cordoned off by the military. This was years and years ago.
Yep, and plus, I've had Klaus Don on my show. I talk to Klaus all the time. He's constantly filling me in on things.
I wish he was here because I bet you he knows all
he knows a lot, and a lot of stuff we've never spoken about on the air. I know of at least several dozen classified digs.
And are these digs classified because of proto-human lineage or something that's more recent, of recent civilizations?
Giant civilization.
Okay, I hear you. So you're talking about maybe an extraterrestrial civilization?
Yeah.
I got you.
And like dozens of them that have been shut down, that have been classified, that have been the objects removed from the ground have been confiscated. It goes on and on and on.
I got you. That sounds like ET cover-up stuff?
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sites right here in the United States, in North America, that North America is generally known for sites and digs such as this, and there's a lot of them that just are not spoken of.
Yeah. and stuff removed from the area. There's some digs going on right now that I'm aware of that are encountering roadblocks, very big roadblocks that have to, certain. I'm going to have Klaus on soon. He'll fill in the gaps.
We'll have to have another pub with him.
I mean, I know about in Tibet. There's a mountain, and in that mountain is a system of tunnels that lead into a very huge antechamber, and there's a bunch of monks that are responsible for that, and in through those tunnels, you can't really go in because there's some sort of morphic resonance that, first of all, gives you a headache, and then if you go too far, it'll kill you dead.
Fucking hell.
The Chinese have sent in a whole group of military guys in there, and the monks had to go in and pull their bodies out.
Holy shit.
But the monks can go in?
Oh yeah. The monks have been doing it.
Because they have a higher vibratory frequency.
Yeah,
and
that
as a
makes
matter
sense.
of fact, the guy that had to go in there, which was Maldashev, the guy that had to go in there had to do a meditation session with these monks for quite a while, and the group that he went with, they, every year or so, they go out as a group, these professional people, and they just take a vacation. They've gone to Stonehenge, they've gone to Easter Island and found a whole bunch of tunnels under Easter Island. They've done a whole bunch of things, but out of the whole group, he was the only one allowed to go. They just said to the other guys, look, you'll die. He could go. And he made it to the entrance of the antechamber, which is this huge chamber within the mountain. And he was getting a headache, and he realized at one point when he got just to the edge of the large chamber that if he took another step, he'd drop dead. He's like, it was just his headache was pounding. And what was in the chamber was a group of giants over 30 feet tall that were in stasis, but still these are not bones we're talking about. These are people who are
living bodies.
Alive. Yes, they're living bodies in stasis. And they apparently have been in stasis for over 10,000 years. And I was joking with Klaus, and I said, well, I guess the monks' jobs were to dust them. Basically, they're glorified cleaners.
Well, there's a real cool movie in that idea.
Yeah, and when I was talking to William Brown was talking about the genetics that he's found in DNA research that basically points to humans being genetically manipulated, what he would call proof of humans being genetically manipulated. He brought up the point, and he said, oh, well, obviously there's a morphic resonance coming from those bodies. Because I thought, like, what would be creating this morphic resonance that gives people headaches and makes them drop dead and stuff? What would do that? And I thought maybe it's a device in the room. And William Brown said, no. It's within their DNA. They're resonating at a frequency and creating a morphic field that if you can't handle it, your body shuts down.
Now I can hear it now. There are two perspectives that would look at this situation. One of them would say, okay, then you need to be at a much more highly spiritually developed level to be able to be in the presence of these beings. Therefore, these beings are likely much more highly spiritually developed. There's another perspective, that earlier perspective, that would see this as, oh my God, though they put up this, they're so evil that it's not, you have to be a highly spiritually developed being to repel the evil coming from these people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
I just know that I want those powers. Yeah, cool.
There would be destruction all over the planet.
Yeah. Do you know if they have tried to send robots there?
No, not that I'm aware of. All I know is that the monks have been what would you say? They've been instructed over time, or they took the role on for themselves. Who knows? To guard the area. And when the Chinese military came in and said, don't be silly. We're going in anyway. And they sent a crew in there. They all dropped dead, and the monks went in and safely pulled their bodies out. That's when the Chinese military said, alrighty then, let's just not do that.
The Tibetans, I've heard many stories for many different reasons in different monasteries, but the Tibetans seem to be record keepers, gatekeepers, keepers of knowledge, archivists that have, whether it's ancient monasteries, very remote monasteries filled with ancient writings from various cultures, spiritual writings, or now even talking about these quote-unquote giants in a cave, it seems that Tibetans are often gatekeepers or archivists or keepers of something.
Yeah, I would agree. And also, from what he understood from what the monks were telling him, is that these are living bodies held in stasis that can be reactivated and reoccupied at any time. Apparently, over the last 10,000 years, there's been no good reason to do it.
Is it within their ability to do it, or how do they know?
Not the monks, no. The beings who previously occupied those bodies can reoccupy them at any time.
Is there a reason they know about that? Were they told that by somebody specifically?
I would say that's the reason I need to get that guy on my show and ask him detailed questions.
Okay.
So they
I'm working to do that, by the way. His native language is not English, although he's translated some of his findings into English, which I have to get a copy of. I'm still working on getting him on the show. It's still a process. Because he's a very famous person in the area of reconstructing eyes. He's a surgeon.
My uncle.
Oh.
But he's very well known like people go from all over the world to have this guy work on his eyes. That's how famous he is. You can look him up at Melashev and you'll see but he's also got some videos out there when he's talking about Easter Island and things like that, but it's not English.
But Spanish?
No.
No, I wish.
Yeah, well, but hopefully, from what Klaus says, he talks very good English, so that would not be a problem. But as far as writing English, maybe a little bit. But from what I heard, he's had it translated into English, so I'm hoping to get my hands on that as well as have him on the show.
Well, that's fascinating as all get out.
Yeah, but my point is there's a lot of stuff out there that speaks to different areas of what we're talking about, but it's not really well known. You know, it's just sort of, it's there.
Not well known and almost impossible to verify.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, right?
Right.
So like, for instance, my work, if stuff I really can't say, go check this out, I'm going to say, well, it's a story I heard. I have no idea if it's real or not.
Yeah. And again, people's testimony is a story. Their life experience is a story.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm like, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Sure. Why not?
I hear you.
And if you discover that, you know, if you backtrack them and do fact checking and if you do some, you look back in their history to find out whether they're telling the truth, then, you know, a few things add up. Like there are people in the alternative field that are just making shit up.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the hazard of this field, you know, and even, have you ever heard David Adair's testimony from the disclosure hearings?
From Greer's disclosure hearings?
Yeah.
Probably. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, Adair stuff is totally unbelievable, except maybe it's true. You know, so he's the guy who said he had a fusion rocket and they landed at Area 51 and went underground. They had him investigate a failed star drive.
Yeah, that guy. I remember that story.
Yeah,
are you hearing me any better right now?
A little bit.
Okay. What I was going to say is, isn't he the one that they brought out of? They went into his high school and brought him out to research this.
Yep, same guy.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah, an incredible story. And again, he's got backstory and stuff, and he was this rocket prodigy, et cetera, and you're kind of going, and again, it's just like, whoa, what a story. But, it's the thing of, so anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot of incredible stories that, again, even like something like Dare, there is enough backstory to trace. At the same time, it's mind-boggling stuff. So,
yeah, and in a lot of those cases, the only thing you can say is, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is like a big, that is one incredible story, and maybe it's true. But yeah, and that's part of the hazard of this whole area, for me anyway, is I've gone down some of those rabbit holes, and you get down to the bottom and you're going, oh, there's nothing there. That happens. But
well, when you look at the evolutionary thing, you're saying that Wade Frazier is standing there saying, wow, that's a mind-boggling story, yet thousands of people would look at your website and go, holy crap, that's mind-boggling. So if a lot of people think what you're saying is mind-boggling.
Well, and part of my story is, well, it's actually really well documented, and actually most of what I put on my site is very little of somebody said something. It's more like
firsthand.
You take again, a lot of my stuff's around history, and so George Washington's little conspiracy to defraud the Indians out of their lands. I mean, that's not even disputable. But none of Washington's biographers can seem to mention it, and stuff. And so a lot of it's like that, where it's very documented, really you can't dispute it. Or like you take Yule Brown's transmutation experiments, or, look through, or the images from a rifescope, et cetera. And these are things that are mind-boggling, but you're going, oh, well, there's the dead body, It's like, okay, people can go check this stuff out. I'm just saying that a lot of stuff in this area is like, can you check it out? Maybe, and it's just difficult. I'm just saying it's a professional hazard. Professional hazard.
It is a professional hazard. I think the stories have their place. Even if you can't back them up, I think the stories have their place. If for nothing else, then to sort of help us get used to a bigger picture, and then maybe later more people can come along and verify. So
true.
Well, sometimes
I'm not saying not to tell them, but I'm just saying there's a lot of stories out there, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was going to say to what you're saying, Wade. Like, if you just did a Google search or a YouTube search on Bigfoot, you'd find all kind of compelling evidence, but you'd also find a bunch of crackpots out there in suits and all kinds of other things. And when I'm trying to do research online, that's one thing that frustrates me, because I'm like, oh, okay, this is some new stuff that was just posted. And then it's some kids out there smoking weed in a suit, and it's like, oh, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Online, it's gotten terrible as far as research. I used to love researching new UFO reports and stuff, and I try to do that on YouTube now and see where that gets you.
Yeah, the technology that's there, like we said earlier, could be good or bad. And the new technology, well, Scott, you probably know, and being in the video business, you could probably create a lot of things and put it online, and it would look, to someone that's not a professional that looks at this stuff, look real.
Yeah, and
that's more of a Yaya question, because that's his field.
Yeah,
Yaya.
Yeah, there's been quite a few videos posted on Nexus and other sites over the years that they say, oh, this is real, this is proof, and I'll go and list the things of, no, it's fake, here's why. And there's to the average person it looks real, but to the trained eye who knows how this stuff is shot, who knows lenses, who knows film stock, who knows imagers, and you see, no, it's fake, and here's why, and I'll illustrate it and point it out. So for most people get fooled, but even there's sometimes I look at something of, that looks real to me, yet there's other people who can illustrate how it's fake too. So
yeah, so in other words, like what Wade is saying is the waters are muddy. So you have to be discernible about what the heck you're looking at. And I mean, you can get behind something and you go out there full force and you say, oh, as evidenced by this. And then all of a sudden you find out that it was actually a fake, and then it makes you look bad because you're a researcher and you got fooled too.
Well, you know what? I think if you're in that situation, you have to stand right up and say, you know what? I got sucked in. You have to admit to your failing. You have to admit to say, admit to your limitations. This looked good to me, and in my experience, I thought this was real, but holy cow, these guys knew better than I did. You just have to admit to your humanness.
Yeah.
So as a guy who did almost most of his study before the internet, it's been interesting to watch the evolution of that and of the slipping of the slipping of scholarship. I mean,
yes.
I did most of my work digging through archives and libraries and ordering, obscure books from universities in Pennsylvania or whatever. And today people equate research with surfing the internet, and and the internet's definitely a much better resource than it was, but it's for the fringe stuff. It's a minefield. It's a minefield for the fringe stuff.
Yeah.
20 hours of Illuminati videos.
Yeah, and this is like one of my beefs a little bit, and I've spoken about it before on the radio show, is that people really don't know the concept of boots on the ground research. Back when I first got into this in later years, when I was a serious researcher and I did it full time, it was my life. 7 days a week, I was traveling, writing testimony, taking ground samples, talking to people separately, whether it was in UFO research or when I was getting letters from all over the world and waiting for them to show up in my mailbox so I could go through them all, testing people on remote viewing skills. And it's a long process. It's not anything I can look up on the internet. I have to set up the experiment, get them to do the experiment, evaluate it, and then come to some sort of conclusion with it. It's a lot different than typing in a search engine and then just getting 183,000 hits and taking the first top 10 and trusting them because they're popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, another issue is we go in the scientific model. Yeah, you have the scientific method, and then you have peer-reviewed journals, which are supposed to set the standard. But now that I know that all this stuff is influenced through the statistical analysis, which can be swayed either way and can be manipulated through money, how can we even have a basis to stand on? You can't even say, well, this was a peer-reviewed journal, so therefore this is a valid study. You can't even say that anymore.
Peer review is a myth. I came out of the scientific business, and back in the early 90s, when I was working at a company when we were trying to develop a new way of testing stuff, and you'd go and take this equipment out, and this equipment was designed, and because I designed it and built it, you knew it was not designed to detect what they wanted it to detect. And when you get back, you collected a bunch of data that you knew was meaningless, and they turn around and say to you, massage the data. In other words, make it up out of nothings to sell stuff.
Yeah,
and so,
check that link out.
For two reasons. You're told to make up data out from thin air to save the prestige of the academic whose theory it is, and also to make money. So I would argue today that almost all medical research, except if it's physically based, like like stem cell, things like that, but I would say that virtually all pharma research is fraud. Most genetic research is fraud because it's manipulated to either make money or create legislation or to preserve prestige.
Has anyone read? Oh, go on.
Go ahead, Mark. Well, I'll just say the quest for the truth is always a difficult one in our world.
Yeah.
And it's something that with the various interests and powers that be and all the rest of the stuff, it's again, what's real, what's true. That's a very difficult thing to do. It really is hard. And the internet's been a double-edged sword in that regard.
Hugely
people want to see the truth. They want to see it and they want to feel it and all that. And it's like, prove it to me. And it's like, oh, how the heck do we do this? Because quite frankly, as researchers that have been through the traditional medical model and the alternative through the internet, it's like you say, how do you know what the truth is? I mean, you have to be discernible, but how do you get the numbers in black and white? Right there it is. Unless you personally do the research yourself. But then if you're not credentialed, and people have to go by credentials these days, if you don't have some type of letter behind your name, then, and if you're not in a prestigious college, you're not even going to get picked up anyway.
That's part of the conundrum. Absolutely. there's no substitute for personal experience. I mean, in the end, that's what it comes down to. And it's, and in fact, my advice for people to develop comprehensive perspectives is, like Scott said, boots on the ground. You got to do some of that. You got to have some direct personal experience of these things to, how to say it, get a feel for it, get a taste for it. I mean, again, there's really nothing like being there. And, when I went, down to Mount Adams several years ago, I've been there a few times, and James.
You're talking about ESETI Ranch.
Yeah. And James, and I'm with an Air Force captain and a couple Boeing guys and stuff. And James goes, well, let me see if I can, he decided to see if he could get one. He tried to flag one down, try to flag one. And a minute later, one goes off.
Yep.
And the guys next to me were never the same.
Oh, I'll bet. I was there. I know. I've experienced some major things at that one location. And out of all the ones that I've researched, like I said, like you're right on. When you say get the boots on the ground and you get the personal experience, the people they want you to bring this information to them so you can funnel it through the television or through the computer. But that personal experience, that energy that you're in, the people you're around in that moment, it's priceless. I can't even tell you how grateful I was to be, say, at ESETI and see those UFOs and him hitting that laser thing, and all of a sudden they power up and everybody's screaming and going, "Oh my God, did you see that?" And they stop and they're turning or we're at Phoenix, Arizona, where I captured the Phoenix lights on my own camera. People can't tell me that didn't happen when I saw it, and I've experienced it myself with no other influence.
Yeah. And when you talked about what's needed when everybody wants you to show them something, well, we know now that you can't trust photos anymore. You can't trust video anymore because it's fake. So it's gotten to the point where you need the same thing. It's really the same thing as spiritual growth. At some point, somebody says spiritually, well, tell me what's real. Point me to a book, or read me a passage from this sacred book or from the Bible or whatever it is. That's nothing. At some point, for people to evolve, you have to point them toward having their own experience.
Exactly.
They're having their own experience to having their own transformative or transformative transrational experiences of non-duality, or to having their own experiences with ETs or with something else. It's pointing people toward their own experience and not just merely showing them facts.
Right. Like Joseph could say, he could show someone the picture and they could say, yes, but pictures can be manipulated. And Joseph would say, yeah, but I was the guy standing behind the camera who took the picture. I was there.
Yes, and
yeah.
he can say that, but
right.
where it really starts to become valuable is when he says, okay, here's how you can have this experience for yourself. Go to this place, and you know what I mean?
I do, exactly. But you have to motivate people to get there.
Yeah, that is exactly. And from experience comes knowledge.
That's right.
Once you do that, no skeptic is going to make you believe that you experienced something else.
You know what, Wade? This is so funny. This is what I tell my mom. She wants me to come back to my, in quotes, religion, which is Catholicism. And I said, when did you quit believing in Santa Claus? And when did you find out he wasn't real? Oh, when I was 8 or 10. Okay, what I want you to do is go back and believe in him now that you know that for sure that he doesn't exist. That's what it's like for me to try to go back and believe in a religion that I know, well, let me just put it this way on the air, that doesn't suit me anymore.
Absolutely. You've outgrown it just like you outgrow the clothes you're wearing when you were 6 years old.
That's it.
I love those people. They are kind of funny sometimes.
It keeps talking about religious people.
I feel a similar thing with those people who are religious. I'm like, man, you find, if I were to tell you that Santa is real, you would laugh at me. But somehow, you believe in this fucking God. It's so absurd.
Yeah.
And it's more probable for Santa to exist than your fucking God.
Do you mean religious God? Or do you mean something in the universe that is beyond human?
Religious God.
Okay.
Organized religion shit.
Okay.
And they are like, leave me alone, it's too much.
Yeah.
In Mexico too.
Sorry?
In Mexico too, it's a very Catholic, very religious country.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't judge any of those people because I used to be there. So when we're talking about different paths on their journey, so those who are listening that can get behind some of what we're saying but are totally religious, you know what? You're in your perfection, and whether you get it this lifetime or next lifetime, that's whatever. I'm not judging you. I used to be right where you're at,
Yep.
but I've had personal experiences that tell me that that's not for me anymore. And it's hard for me to explain it to you. You have to personally experience it. That's what we're here. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience.
That's right. Those experiences and those things, they've been demonstrated by many people to be levels of development, but they're all necessary because we all grow through them. We grow through them at different rates. And
Right.
we're having those experiences at different rates. Some people spend a lot more time in there than others, but they're all necessary experiences that people have to have.
Right.
In the meantime, I have to cope with them. I don't like that.
It's called building your patience.
Yeah, there you
right.
go.
But
But no, the thing is,
sometimes it's too much.
the thing is though, like Yaya said, these are stages, and I'm not necessarily saying that my stage is better than their stage.
Yes,
And just
you
because
can.
I used to be somewhere that they're at now, maybe they're further ahead than I am, and I've degraded.
You can
Right.
say, yes, you
I
can
was
actually
there,
demonstrate that it
perfect.
is better. You can actually demonstrate that it is better.
I was being polite.
It's
Okay.
better. Fuck. It's better, man. Fuck.
It's
I
better.
wouldn't,
Because-
I wouldn't say it's better
Well,
because it's just different. If you're further down the path, it's like someone walking down a path and they can see something further ahead of you when you're behind them. That don't make you better. It just makes you further along your path. That's all.
Well, no, but if you're further up the ladder, as it were, and you can see 300 miles away, and if you see more, if you're capable of containing and operating from more perspectives, which include every perspective that came before, it's not hierarchical in that what came before is bad and must be negated. It's holarchical in that what came before is embraced and makes up a part of you. But if you're capable of operating from more perspectives, and then knowingly, as we evolve spiritually, we're able to operate with more compassion too. And so
Sure.
the more perspectives you can see and operate from, and then the more compassion you can generate, not generate, but operate from, that by definition is better, but not more important.
Not in a judgmental way. That's
No.
what I'm trying to get out there, that we're not trying to say anybody on a different rung is any better or any worse. We're all equal in this, and we're just at a different level. And the only reason we were using these types of words like up, down, good, bad, we live in this dualistic world, and because we have language to contend with, there's not words that can convey certain aspects of humanity that we can reach everybody at the same level, if that makes any sense.
Well, we can always see where we've been, but we can never see what's next or where we're going.
Oh shit.
Have a high potential, we can look at our highest potential, and we can look at certain people or beings that have been on this planet that were showing us our greatest potential. But I agree with you. I don't think that anybody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, because when you make a prediction, for instance, the energies that are here right now, if I made a prediction, if I was going to predict in say 1 minute this is going to happen, my accuracy would be very high. But because of the variables and the outside influences, if I was going to say in a year from now this is going to happen, too many things could possibly happen, and thoughts and all kinds of things that would change that prediction.
Yep.
So it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future. Our power is in our now, in our right now moment. What can we do right now? What direction, with the circumstances that we are standing in right now and the energies that we're at, where do we want to go, and where do we want to focus our attention or intent towards? That's our power.
And what can we create right now?
Okay, look, here's the thing. I don't judge those people because I get a thrill about being, some narcissistic superiority to them. The thing is whether you like it or not. I mean, these people, whether they are victims or whether they are there because they like it, they are creating a fucked up world. I mean, some people, talking about religious people, some of them live with the guilt I mean, it's really messed up to see that kind of extreme.
Oh, guilt and fear.
Yeah, and some people go on and, they are nice, maybe. They can be very nice people, but it is something that creates, it's something harmful. On a psychological level, it's really fucked up.
Well, that's where Yaya was talking about having compassion for other people, because you can actually see where they are on their journey sometimes, but you don't have to judge them. You can just have compassion, send them love, and be like, hey, I see where you're at. I don't agree with what you're doing, and therefore I'm not going to associate myself with you. I'm going to go to where I feel better, and the energies and the people, kind of like birds of a feather flock together type of a thing.
Right, and this has happened. I'm sure I could ask every one of you here, if there's people in your life that have just fallen away because your energies don't, or your understandings, or what your focus is, no longer really lines up with them anymore.
Right.
And those people they just fall away. You don't know why, you can't explain it, there's no reason for it. It just disappear.
Scott, I have no idea what you're talking about, Bell.
Yeah, join the club.
Yeah, I just described your life. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, guys, just a bit of an FYI here. We're getting close to the 3-hour mark in our fourth pub. We don't have to end it right away, but
Okay.
We should start closing it down.
Okay, can I just say one? Can I say one thing?
Hey, knock yourself out.
What I've been thinking about it. So back to kind of the boots on the ground experience. And one of the things, kind of one of the big themes of my site is, again, I look at the major ideologies: capitalism, nationalism, organized religion, scientism, etc. And one of the things I do is I say, well, here's the things that we know, put that in quotes, know, and pretty much my site's showing that actually we don't know. And when I found people that have their belief systems, it's kind of like you talk about Santa Claus. It's like, so they believe in a certain thing about their country or their whatever, and I'm going, so what's that based on? And it turns out that it's something somebody told them.
So, yeah.
It's not something that they found out on their own. It's a story they were told, and a story that doesn't take much work to find out. The story is really not the story, but it's the story you were told. And that's kind of, and again, I think in any of the awakening process that people go through, I mean, for me, that was very important to go, when I staggered out of Ventura 20 some years ago, I'm going, I don't think anything that I was taught about the world is true. And that was kind of the beginning point of what I did. And I'm not so sure that I know what is true, but I sure know that the stuff I was taught is true has got no basis in reality. And that was kind of and I think that the process of, quote, awakening, that's going to be a big part of it for people.
Yeah, I agree. And also, the universe will let you know things, and it'll say it quietly in your ear, and then it might say it a little louder, and eventually it'll hit you in the back of the head with a 2x4 just to get the point across.
Oh, yeah.
I'm that guy.
Does it whisper to you?
Oh, God.
are you the guy or are you the 2x4?
No, I'm that guy who gets the 2x4 on the back of the head over and over and over again just to get the point across. I don't really hear the small silent voice as I do now, but it took a lot of lumps.
Yeah.
Does it whisper to you?
Another thing is synchronicity. So things that'll be happening, and the higher energies we get into, and the more conscious people come, and because we're all related, and we talked about the 100th monkey roll and all that stuff, as our consciousness rises over this next year, the next couple of years, you're going to see some. I hate to make any predictions, so I'll just be general. I really think that we're going to see some major changes, because just think if one of the things, like one of those dominoes that we talked about tonight, just drops. If one of those things happen, the whole world is going to be turned upside down, whether it be free energy, whether it be ET technology, ancient civilizations, religions don't exist. They were all formatted to control the banking system.
Collapse of currencies, yeah.
Can you imagine one little thing has to drop and the rest are just going to fall? That's why I'm so excited, because there's so many things culminating at one place at one time, and all that's going to take is, we're teetering. I really feel it. I see it with all the places I've traveled, all the people I've talked to. I want people to get excited, because when you get excited and you have that feeling from the heart, it goes out. And one of the things we didn't talk about is energetically how powerful of a being we are, but even more so collectively. And that's that 100th monkey rule that we talk about. Energetically, when we come together to pray for one thing at one time, it's not the church or the denomination that creates a miracle. It's the people. It's the communion. It's us. So what can we do? And I know we're wrapping things up here. We need to come together and with these ideas, go to the pub like we just did tonight, sit there and talk about, okay, what can we do and how can we do it? And as Mario says, we have to be influential and change. We can't just sit there and talk about it. What can we do? What can we physically do? We're in physicality. Now that we know what exists, who else can we talk to gather together energetically, whether we're meditating, whether we're going to these ancient places? As we raise in our vibratory frequency, we affect everybody in a domino effect. So that would be my message, and that's how I would end tonight's session for myself. Thank you for having me on here, you guys. It was great, and it was great to meet everybody. I'd love to come back sometime if I was.
For sure, we'll have you back. I think that's a fantastic way to sort of put a cap on it. And I totally, synchronicity would have been a great subject to get on, because that's a really powerful thing in my own experience, in my own world too. So maybe that's something for the next one.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, like I say, the pubs just sort of happen, and they're very random, and they just sort of happen. And Yaya clicks record, and off we go. They're not scheduled.
Nope, they're not rehearsed. Can't do one tomorrow, though. At least I can't do one tomorrow. But
yeah, well, maybe a couple weeks we'll do another one.
No one cares about you anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
We hit on a lot of things tonight. What do you guys think?
No, we do.
About energy, and look where we went.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it.
I just felt stupid today. Yeah.
Well, sorry for my bad audio problems here, but man, it's been really great listening, and I probably won't be able to sleep half the night tonight.
Why not? Are you getting drunk tonight?
There you go. Now you're cooking.
He's getting drunk.
Yeah. And Wade, thanks so much for joining us out here and coming out. This has been really cool. Meeting you, Wade, and Joseph, and then Gary a little bit earlier. I was wondering about what form this would take and how this whole conversation would go, but really it was just fantastic. It went down places that I didn't expect.
Well, thanks for having me.
That's the beauty of having different people. Yeah, thanks a lot, Wade. Thanks for coming on. I hope you were comfortable.
So you see, Wade and Joseph, this is not a typical interview show. This is not. It's just a multi-layered conversation. So the dynamic and what gets covered and the experience is completely different from an interview show. We intended the pub to be a non-interview thing, and so this is what it is. So hope both of you guys will come back and do it again. Yep.
Absolutely. You know what, Scott or Yaya, if you guys give me the recording part of this, I'll upload it on my YouTube if everybody gives me permission to do that.
Well, it'll there's a couple little tiny things I got to edit, but it'll get uploaded to a thread on Spectrum. You'll be whether you're a member or not, you'll be able to get at it. You'll be able to download the recording, and then you can probably post it wherever you want.
Yeah, you can do with it as you please.
Yeah.
Wade, you can put it on your website. Joseph, you can put it on YouTube if that's something you want to do. We'll be having it on the forum, like you said. It's very open. We don't have any restrictions on it.
Or I think you could even, I think you can download it and post it places too. But I think it's also useful just to point toward the page in the forum too.
Yeah.
Because
and you have to pay me.
There's also that.
Yeah, we've got to send Reaver some tequila.
And I'm the most cynical asshole.
Yeah, he needs plenty of shaving cream.
Yeah, that's true.
What did he say?
He says you need plenty of shaving cream.
Shave balls.
You knew it was going to come, right? You knew it, right? All right.
Harley wanted me to say it. I wasn't planning on.
Oh, Scott, you're right. It went in many directions tonight. I'll tell you.
Right. Yep, it did.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have a pub dedicated.
Must be getting late night at the pub, huh?
We're all metaphorically drunk.
I'm just going to say, okay, we might as well just sort of close it. But before we close it, Wade Frazier, tell us your website. Where can we find you?
Oh, you just put my name into a search engine. That works. WADEFRAZIER. And there's a few other Wade Fraziers, and I in fact, they probably wish that I wasn't named Wade Frazier. But anyway, put my name in, I'll come up.
Yeah, and also he has healedplanet.net.
That's the domain name.
And he also posts, he has his own thread on the Avalon forum, and you can listen to this on the Universal Spectrum forum under the pub live chats. You can just find it there.
And Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Where can people find you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, I have two websites. One's universaltalk.info, and the other one's A Guiding Light, which is spelled LITE.com.
There you go. And are you still doing radio right now, Joseph?
I haven't. What's funny is over the past several months, I was on my own personal journey, and that's why I was saying I went to the Mayan civilization, and I was sitting on Koba, I think it's called, was the biggest pyramid that they found there. And I mean, sometimes you get wrapped up in your own thing, or life gets in the way type of thing. You're in your own research, and I just kind of took a break from doing it all. And it's
yep.
I'd like to get. Yeah, I'd like to get back to it now that I think this is the time. I think that's what everybody was, over the past year was uncertainty of the 2012 phenomenon and what was all going to happen at the end of the year or the first of the year or what's going on now. But now we've gotten past that, and I think the energies are higher now, and I think now's the time for people to come together like we did tonight and make some positive changes for our world and for our kids and our grandkids,
Nice.
If you ever need someone who knows a lot about shape balls, I'm your man.
Oh, jeez. On that note,
I know it's weird, but
On that note.
On that note, we'll just maybe call that the end of the edition number 4 of the pub at Universal Spectrum.
Yeah. And thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We covered a lot of areas. We were all over the map, but it was all a cohesive conversation. And I hope to see you guys soon. This will be posted probably later tonight, tomorrow. What's your opinion? Yeah.
Depending on whether you're up to upload it, it'll probably be tomorrow morning.
And I will be I will be available.
Okay, if you're up late, then you might get it early. So.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for showing up, and we'll do it again.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.